Welcome to the Josh and Josh Talk Everything and Nothing show.
Yeah.
On today's episode, a farewell to Josh and Josh Talk Wrestling.
Oh.
Facebook social media idiocy.
Shh.
80s and 90s Pizza Hut memories.
Pizza Hut. Butt to gut.
And we're going to take on anti-vaxxers. Mr. Josh, what do you say?
Well, do I get to choose one?
I guess we could start anywhere.
Wait, are we live? Oh my gosh, we're actually recording. Oh, I thought you were just joking. This is really. Oh, hey,
really
I'm ready. We're doing this, man. This is all going down. Josh and Josh no longer talk wrestling. So what's up, man? We're not doing the wrestling thing anymore, huh? That's it.
We're not doing the wrestling thing anymore.
Do you know why?
You can blame it on two things.
Okay.
You can blame it on the pandemic, kind of scuttlebutting a lot of things, making things more difficult than it needs to be. And the second is, you could blame it on me at the end of the day, folks. All 46 of you subscribers, they're all still subscribed to their credit.
We love every last one of you, and I mean Nick,
Mr. Nick.
If we gotta say there's a number one friend, Mr. Nick, you were the guy. You were the glue that held our fan base together.
It's true. Our friend Nick messaged us many times, and we talked a lot, and we even did a couple of shows based on his suggestions. He was the super fan.
That's right. He was a super fan. But I'm sorry, you were taking blame for the failure of JJTW. Go ahead.
I fell out of love with wrestling, and I blame WWE. Because when you have a podcast, I know we weren't like top of the line, Busted Open or Steven Larson, like top of the, top tippy top guys.
Right.
But when you have a podcast, you and I, like you always said, we always gave it the old college try. Mm-hmm. So we always wanted to try and stay on top of what is happening in the world of wrestling. Who is the champion at any given moment? What happened? What if somebody makes an appearance, you try to know about it to a certain degree. But the problem with that is you keep up with so much news, you really learn how dirty and nasty the world of wrestling can be, especially WWE. So for me, like our shows became every week. It was like what new horrible, offensive, illegal, sexist, racist thing is WWE doing this time? Is it a sexist T-shirt? Is Vince McMahon telling people nobody wants to bang them? They're not hot enough. Is it a fan telling this to someone? Is someone being forced to work injured? Is someone being pressured to do things they're not comfortable with? Are there all kinds of lawsuits? It's always something so nasty. And also just you combine that with at the time the state of WWE with no live audience. And they learned to adapt to that later, and they took actions. And
I think they did a great job too, by the way.
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
But WWE's credit, they did a great job.
Yeah. I mean, they found a way. But to me, it all just combined to just be like, I just don't enjoy this anymore. And the thing is, when you're doing a show, you kind of have to be enthused about the product. It's funny because I see some of these like larger wrestling coverage YouTubers, and you can sometimes tell when some of these guys are like their paychecks on the line, but they're just not at all enthused about the product.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're just like, yeah, and then Triple H beat Sting, or whatever it is, like they're just like, yeah. And I just didn't want to be that. You didn't deserve that. Like you deserved somebody who actually was enthusiastic about the product and wrestling. And I used to be. And I loved doing a podcast with you, but the subject matter I just wasn't interested in it. That's why, and so I always said, I was trying to come up with if we could do something else, I'd be up for that because I love doing the podcast with you, but I don't want to talk about wrestling anymore. And I really have fallen off the wagon, only tuning in every now and then to watch something for AEW. But like the way it is like you have to watch X number of hours to really stay in the loop of wrestling, and I'm the kind of guy who wants to at least follow the storyline, and even that's still too much. So I'm still very casual, like in and out. And
that's a tough thing because right now, as a wrestling fan, it would be if there's so many crossovers, the forbidden door's been open, and it would be like being a comic book fan and seeing Marvel and DC and Image and Valiant and all these different comic book companies they have had crossovers before, but we're talking every single comic book company coming together and have crossovers. That's what's happening in wrestling right now, and I'm loving it. And but yes, to your point, I follow wrestling very deeply. I really follow anything from New Japan to WWE to Ring of Honor to the local independent show at an armory down the street. I follow all that stuff in between. Yeah. And to your point, there's this part of me with wrestling, once you've seen how the sausage is made, so to speak, it's not as much fun, and you there's kind of a feeling for the wrestlers. You're like, am I supporting something I shouldn't be? To that, I would say is that WWE is not exactly a wrestling company. I think we now know that it's an entertainment company. It really is pretty much going to be owned by NBC. You see with all the cuts they've had, and it's just not going to be a pro wrestling company. But the good thing to that is there's several other companies that are pro wrestling companies. AEW, Ring of Honor, Impact, New Japan, the list goes on and on. That's just a couple of the big ones. I mean, there's your local independent shows. They're doing good shows as well, too. For me, what it honestly came down to was that I was being disingenuous. So in wrestling, they talk about smarks and they talk about marks. Marks would be considered like a lower end a wrestling fan, where smarks are like the smart marks, the smart wrestling fans. They know more than the marks. The bottom line is this: the greatest wrestling fans, and I said this before on our podcast, the JJTW podcast, the greatest wrestling fans in the world, it's not me, it's not you. It's the men and women that wrestle in that ring. It's the pro wrestlers themselves. They are the best fans on earth, and they are the ones that are getting banged up, dinged up in the ring for maybe $50, enough money to grab a sandwich and a half tank of gas with some other wrestlers and make it to the next town.
Ham and eggers,
you know, and that, I mean, The Rock talked all the time before he was, on the Forbes 100 when he was wrestling back in 1996, had $7 to his name. Thank God for Waffle House. You know, he could get a full meal. That the Young Bucks talked about all the time, like, when they were traveling with their friends, they'd get an appetizer sampler because it could feed all four of them, and they'd share a car together. So they are the real fans. So really, when it comes down to it, I'm a mark. You're a mark. All of us wrestling fans are marks. Wrestlers are smarks. That's what it comes down to. All pro wrestlers are smarks, and all wrestling fans are marks. And we had no business talking about the pro wrestling business. We weren't insiders. We were super fans, but we weren't insiders. Yeah. And it felt disingenuous.
Okay. Wow. Okay. I mean, okay. I never thought of it that way.
It was fun. We didn't talk crap, and we talked legitimate stuff. And yes, I've been to tons of wrestling shows, and we had insight probably greater than a lot of wrestling fans. But you know what? With the exception of working a few indie shows, I've never worked for WWE. I've never worked for Impact. I've never worked for Ring of Honor. And honestly, I shouldn't even say, and I said this on our podcast before, I was never a pro wrestler. Just because I wrestled 3 matches on a semi-professional level, that did not make me a pro wrestler. And it did not, I would say, would not justify having a pro wrestling match. So again, I mean, we're having fun. We people knew that. We weren't trying to explain to people that we knew that we were better than any other wrestling fans. In fact, I think every wrestling fan has something they can bring to the table. Whether you're a WWE fan, whether you're a luchador style fan, whether you're a New Japan fan, whether you're an extreme, game-changing wrestling fan, GCW. I think everyone brings something to the table. But at the end of the day, all of us wrestling fans are marks. Pro wrestlers are smarks. And again, I just don't know that we had business having a pro wrestling podcast. We were super fans, but that was it.
Well, I mean, I think that there is something to be said for like the uneducated view, I guess you like is what I'm seeing here. Like, I mean, you don't have to be a filmmaker to criticize film. No, you know what I mean. You don't have to have written a book. Like some people try and say that, and they're like, well, how many books have you written? And it's like, well, it doesn't matter. You know, like, I mean, we never tried to pass ourselves off as these authorities. We were enthusiastic. We had our opinions and we shared them openly and we talked about them. But I feel like it showed through that we were just fans.
And I want to make sure, at the end of the day, I think that's where it came from. I feel like that's where, and again, everyone's got a podcast, right? Why would they listen to ours? We could tell you a lot about front of house, but once behind the curtain, we couldn't tell you about that stuff.
We didn't have the inside scoop. We have our anonymous source told us,
and wrestling's an acquired taste too. Yeah. I mean, I'll just be honest. Like, my wife never listened to my previous podcast, and I don't blame her. Yeah. Wrestling's an acquired taste. She doesn't know anything about it. Yeah. I mean, most of our friends and family that would want to support us, they don't know about wrestling. Right. They're not going to like the show.
It's true. Well, that's when you put the podcast on, you put it on mute, and then you go make a sandwich.
Well, okay, yeah, but the other thing too with wrestling, it's really hard to keep up because wrestling, I think, in a lot of ways moves a little faster than fashion. Like fashion's moving every season. I know. Yeah. My wife, owner, founder of Shopping Girl XOXO. Go to www.shoppinggirlxoxo.com. Shameless plug. Don't cut my mic. I got it in. Everyone heard it.
Hey.
shameless plug, but she knows she is a fashionista.
Yeah.
Fashion moves quick. I think wrestling might move a little bit quicker than fashion in some ways.
Well, I mean, the big joke is always like, that was so last week, but that's how it really is with wrestling. Is like, that championship was so last week.
Right.
Like that's why whenever the games come out or anything, it's never in sync with who's actually the champion at any given time. You know.
Yeah.
You just can't keep up.
No, you're right. I do want to, kind of circle back. Thank you again to all our subscribers for Josh and Josh Talk Wrestling. We're still doing our same thing. We're just kind of opening it up. We're talking. This is, we actually, I don't even think we told anyone what the name of this podcast is. We sort of just got into it. I didn't even realize we started. You were ready to go. And what's funny? We even talked about it pre-show. We're like, all right, we're going to do it this time. We had a couple takes.
Right.
I was like, okay, and then we started. I don't even want. I'm not good at this. I probably shouldn't be doing this podcast. You know what? This has been a lot of fun. I think we're done. I'm out. I'm out.
WWE has ruined this podcast for me too. Goodbye.
That's on us. That's on us. But no. So this is yeah. So I do want to thank all of our fans, subscribers with Josh and Josh Talk Wrestling. Come on over. We're still here. In fact, hit us up in the good old hot box. I realize we don't have an email. We don't have an inbox. So we're going to use the old one because why not, right? So hit us up in the hot box. Josh and Josh Talk Wrestling at gmail.com. We're still going to look at it for the new podcast.
Yes.
It costs a lot. Gmail addresses.
It's so much, man.
I mean, how much are they nowadays?
I had to buy our Gmail from a guy in a parking lot for a Publix grocery out of the trunk of his car. Yeah, I had to travel cross country.
Well, a lot of people don't know this, but we're actually coming to you from Pangea. So, and I don't know of any Publix in Pangea, so you had to go pretty far for that. Jeez. Well, okay, cool, man. That's all good.
We got it, all right?
But hey, we're still doing our same thing here. Let's get to it. That was our nice little bridge, a little transition. I wanted to make sure we had appropriately assigned blame to the other Josh for ruining the podcast. Not me.
Yes.
This Josh is okay. It's the other Josh.
And I blame Vince McMahon.
Yeah, no, I'm joking. There's no one to blame. It's just I think it's one of those things we had to move on. Yeah. We were ready to go. We had some new concepts. We still want to do the podcast together, and I think that we were just ready to move past wrestling. But
I just want to say we had a great time. I had a great time with you, boss, and I hope and like that podcast meant something to me. Well,
we went 2 years. Let's not bury the lead on that. We went 2 years in that podcast, and most people talk about podcasts, and that's as far as it gets. They're hanging out with their buddies on a couch.
No.
You're having some drinks, having some smoke or whatever. Say, hey, a podcast would be great. We should do it.
No.
And that's all that ever happens. We actually did, and we went 2 years.
It's true.
That is something that we should be commended for. And again, we want to thank our fans because you guys are interactive. I also think it's interesting. We never got any negative feedback. All the hits we got, in the hot box on social media, it was all contributing. It was all contribution. It was all adding on to what we've already had out there. Some really really good points. So
I think we were able to tap into like some really enthusiastic fans and like you talked about. How we're just fans.
Yeah.
I think that worked to our favor where we were just fans, just like those guys.
Right.
And I think that resonated maybe with a couple people,
Yeah. We love you all, though. We're still going to be doing this. We'll still be talking about wrestling on this one.
Sure.
But yeah, we're going to talk about some more stuff. But speaking of, we should actually introduce the official name. We're, 20 minutes into the show, we're going to actually introduce the name of the podcast. And this is the Josh and Josh Talk Everything and Nothing podcast. You're probably thinking, oh, okay, so it's Seinfeld. You're absolutely right. That's the concept. We've stolen it, and we probably will do not as something as good with it. So we'll leave it at that. Josh, one of the things we wanted to talk about, we did some actually kind of pre-surveying. Future shows are going to be depend on your contributions. That's why you got to hit us up in the hot box, Josh and Josh Talk Wrestling, gmail.com. You got to hit us up. Your feedback is going to drive future shows. But this one, obviously, no one knew we were doing it. So we did some pre-surveys. We had some interesting things kind of come up. People wanted to talk about. We pulled some sort of 3 fun ones. How about like 80s, 90s Pizza Hut?
Pizza Hut, man. Because remember, Pizza Hut used to be like a real restaurant.
Hold on. I want you to stop for a second. Do you smell that? It's 5:30 p.m. in the 80s on a Friday night. It's Friday, yes, sir. You know what night it was. Friday night. You're rolling up in that parking lot, and you get out of your car, and there's this waft of parmesan that hits your nostrils. You walk in, and there's just the smallest foyer, smallest lobby to Pizza Hut. But once you get checked in, there's this whole open space, and there's awesome salad bar, and all the way you're smelling Parmesan. It's in your clothes, it's in your veins. There's nothing you can do about it. You're in a Pizza Hut bubble. And everywhere you look, there's an arcade. There's only one arcade in Pizza Hut.
Yep.
But the design is there's mirrors, and it makes it look like in the peripheral there's always an arcade in the corner of your eye, and there's always a smell of Parmesan. And then they take your order, and as you're waiting for your food, you go to the salad bar. And back then the salad bar was loaded on the side with kale just to make it look nice, because people back then didn't know what kale, how awesome it was, how it was a superfood. And nowadays people just run and buy kale, everywhere, and they spend $50. But back then kale was used on the exterior of the salad bar for Pizza Hut. And you just load up on a little, couple pieces of lettuce, some big cherry tomatoes, and a whole hell of a lot of ranch. And you go back to your seat, and then you just smell more Parmesan. And then you see that pizza come out, that cast iron skillet, and they put it on your table, and you dig in. And that's how I learned how to read. That was part of the Book It program.
Pizza
Hut taught me not only how to become fat, but also how to learn how to read. But but to your point, you were alluding to that, Josh. That is, I think, all of our concepts of 80s, 90s, probably more specifically 80s Pizza Hut, where it used to be more of a restaurant.
Yeah.
Domino's always did the 30 minutes or less thing, but Pizza Hut was an actual restaurant.
It was a sit-down waiters.
Sit-down waiters.
Yeah.
It was a big deal.
Booths. It was a fairly classy place.
Yeah. And the food was good, and the Pizza Hut was so much better. They spent more time on it, and eventually what happened was, I think a lot of restaurants went the way of the dodo bird, not because of pandemic, but because of deliveries, and so people focused on a lot of delivery. And Pizza Hut, I think, did some good things in the 90s with their Pizza Hut. For example, they had like the Bigfoot pizza, that sheet of pizza.
Oh yeah,
they had
Pizza by the Foot.
Pizza by the Foot. Yeah. They had a triple decker pizza, which is based like the Big Mac.
Do you remember the Edge?
The Edge.
I've been
the
to
toppings
the
were
Edge.
all the way to the Edge. I think they brought that back or something too. Yeah. But no, and then of course the stuffed crust pizza and all that, and there was this thing about 80s, 90s pizza that was so much better, and I've had it since, and it's just not as good. But I think a lot of it is growing up. I Book It program. Again, it was a really good thing. I was excited to learn because I knew I got a personal pan pizza at the end of the week.
Yeah,
and that's bad. You probably shouldn't reward people with food like that. Especially in America,
unhealthy food. Yeah,
we see now 30, 35 years later what's happening. But
it's funny how our perspective on things changes. Like, give the kid a pizza. They're going to want to read all the time, and it's
they're right.
And they get diabetes at 30 because they're still trying to book it.
Right.
No, Pizza Hut, man. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Going back to the quality you were talking about is like. It wasn't a fast food restaurant back then.
Right.
That's the key, right? Mm-hmm. It was like a family restaurant, not fast food. So you would sit down, you'd have a waiter, you'd do the thing. And for me, Pizza Hut was all about maximizing the amount of time I could get on that Turtles in Time arcade machine.
Oh, yeah, that was a fun.
Like
those Turtles are good arcade games, weren't they? Yeah, that one especially.
Right, like we were so close to the Pizza Hut, it was like 3 blocks away. So we would just walk it, right? And I remember always trying to walk as far ahead as I could so I could get through the door quicker, so I could put my coin in what would hopefully be an unattended turtle.
Exactly, and you're hoping that when you got to the door, someone else is coming in. But if you walked a little bit faster on the side of the restaurant, you beat them once you got in the restaurant. Yeah.
So you get to play the player 2 sticky joystick. Go for it. That's what pizza was all about for me, because I don't think we ever dined in at that Pizza Hut. It was just, for whatever reason, we just always got it to go or they didn't offer delivery for the longest time by us. I remember later on they did, and it was limited. Like, for whatever reason, I don't know if it was because it was a franchise thing and the owner, whatever. I don't know. So it was always like, go in, get it. Because, like I said, 3 blocks away, just, Man, but yeah, playing turtle, like when you're a kid, when you're 7, 8, 9, 10, that's like the most important thing in life is that you get to play like hopefully 15 minutes of Turtles in Time.
Yeah, now I think we could probably play it on our phones, but still the same thing as kids do. There's
at the time,
Fortnite or whatever it is. It's at the time that was the Fortnite, so to speak. So
do you remember some of the giveaways they would have, like the promotional items?
I remember the Land Before Time. Do you remember that? Like
they had the puppets.
Yes,
right?
that was a big thing. I tried to collect all of them. Yeah, I was a big Land Before Time fan.
Back to the Future 2, they had the sunglasses.
That's right.
My sister had a bunch of those. X-Men tapes.
That's right. I forgot. The X-Men tapes. That's right.
That's right. I remember for some of us that was the first introduction to X-Men. We didn't even we were just like, what is this? And like I remember some girl was like looking and she's like, Rogu.
Yeah, Rogue.
we didn't know. Like, it was great.
Yeah.
What else was it? There was they had movies. I remember they were giving away terrible movies. It was like
Why don't I remember
it was
that?
like really bad movies, except for like 2 of them. It was like Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey was one of the good ones.
That's not a bad
and
movie.
Like Weekend at Bernie's 2 was one of the.
That's
good
not
ones.
a bad movie either.
Did I say bad? I meant those were the 2 good movies.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
The rest of them were the bad ones.
What were the bad ones?
Oh God, I'm trying to remember. It was like. Fuck, I shouldn't have brought it up because I can't think of any of the bad ones. Because I only focused on getting the good ones.
Oh, okay,
I was like, fuck these
that's
other
fair,
ones.
That's fair, yeah.
But if you look it up, look up the late 90s or something, it was like, get these DVDs. And it was like, it was junk. It was real junk.
Probably the Blair Witch Project or something.
Maybe. I don't know. Like, I feel like they were tamer. Because it was Pizza Hut. But yeah, like Pizza Hut transitioned to a fast food restaurant and out went all those little extra niceties, like the fancy cups or the the waiters and shit. Like,
I think a lot of restaurants have done that, and I think there's with all these delivery apps like Grubhub and Postmates, and I think that they're all good. They're good to a certain extent, but I think that we all need to be focusing on one thing, and I don't mean to get all zen in the art of motorcycle maintenance on you folks. If you've never read that book, you should. But really, quality is something that I think we lack. If we think about it, like in our day-to-day interactions, if we had better quality, I think we'd have less problems. If we really, for example, if every company before they released a product actually focused on the quality of it, really focus on the quality, not try to rush something out for the board and hope that the first people that will buy it, they're the testers, the beta users, but actually develop a really good product with as few errors as possible. It's going to save you customer service calls in the long run, and it's going to give you a better public image, and people are going to be happier. No one likes to buy a phone and find out it was a broken piece of crap. And that can transcend so many different things. So many people can have crappy customer service experiences. They then take that energy and take it out on someone else they see in the street, whatever, and it's this whole ripple effect. So it seems like I'm thinking pretty big picture on this, but again, I think if companies and we as people focus on quality, those experiences, that's going to take care of half our problems. And it sucks because I've had pizza and I've had Papa John's recently delivered, and it's garbage. I would say Domino's actually does a pretty good job. They have a new recipe. They've got the whole heat wave. Yeah. They've developed that technology. And again, I think Domino's is focusing on that quality. They even have something where they have the delivery pickup insurance. You mess it up, we'll fix it for you. Nice. So that's cool. And those little niceties you talk about, they're adding quality.
Do you pay for that insurance?
No, it's just part of it. It's just part of the actual. Well, they may.
I mean, if you abuse it, of course they're going to, revoke their.
Right, and I'm sure. I'm sure somehow they add that in their toppings. There's, nothing's ever.
Maybe,
nothing's ever
probably
free,
making
right?
out. Well,
but still, my point is that they focus on quality, and I've worked with so many companies, and I just sit there and wonder, wow, if you just sat there and focused on quality, focused on adhering to policies, focused on adhering to regulations, focus on customer success, and really your focus with customers is they should never contact customer service. Anytime customer contacts customer service, that company lost. Yeah. No one's calling to say, hey, just want to let you know my product arrived on time, and as I sit here and look at this product, I feel self-actualized and enlightened. No one's calling and letting the company know that. They're calling because they're pissed off about something being broken.
It's very rare that you get the complimentary call. Right. Yeah.
And listen, it's Murphy's Law. There's always going to be something wrong. But what I'm saying is, as a company, is if you focus on the quality up front, you're going to take care of 80% of those problems. So that 20% that would happen anyway is still going to happen. So don't worry, customer service is never going anywhere. You're always going to need some type of service, whether it's a virtual bot or an actual human being. It's Murphy's Law. You'll always need help. But again, my point is focus on quality.
Right. Well, my response to that is, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, capitalism doesn't really reward quality necessarily. Like, you can play the long game and become one of those companies that's known for quality, that's known and trusted. And it's not just marketing, you know what I mean? It's a product, I don't know about anybody else, but I love HP. I've had HP products. They're always fantastic. They've always treated me well. That's my personal experience. Yeah. That's anecdotal, of course, but that's going to lead me to continue to pursue HP products when I just need a simple desktop. Right. You know what I mean? Like that. There's that way. I don't know if HP is any good. They might be horrible people. I don't know. But for me, that's enough. But I feel like capitalism doesn't always reward that. It's just it's more about marketing, sometimes tricking people into buying your product for a lot of these companies. Yeah, and they get rewarded. You could do it both ways. I'm not saying capitalism in this case is entirely evil, but it's a lot of the it's everybody's out to make a quick buck, and sometimes you can make a quick buck with little quality.
Right, and I think you're absolutely right. I think that because to me, a certain extent, and I've mentioned this before to you, I think capitalism is freedom to a certain extent. But that's also the Marxist in me. I understand as a Marxist, I'm giving my time up to an employer who's giving me money, and that's the base of Marxism. But what I always tell people is, why don't you positively exploit a company? And I mean that in a good way. Most companies have a plethora of benefits that people just don't use.
Yeah.
That company is going to use you. They're going to drive you into the ground. Well, why don't you positively exploit and just use their benefits so it's a win-win situation? The company's going to use you,
right.
You use the company, and everyone wins. But that's the thing is, I think to your point is we're missing this core function of quality, because it's all about trying to get people just fill seats, fill people in customer service. Where I think some of these positions, I think like customer service, it seems like they'll take any person off the street. I think Sometimes. It takes a special person to be customer service agent.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that the fact that they're generally the least paid in a company, I find that wild. I mean, really, especially if as a company, if you're just rushing stuff out the door, letting your users be the beta testers, they're going to contact customer support. They're putting up with all this burden. They have to troubleshoot all this stuff, constantly relearn the rules. They should be one of the most paid people on your workforce.
But they're not. And when you're not paid that much, you're just not. I don't expect people to really care if you're making just $12 an hour.
You're gonna get what you pay for. Unfortunately,
So like when I call somebody, I know they're not paid well, and they're just kind of like, yeah. I'm just like, I don't blame you. I really don't.
Well, especially when the world's on fire right now, right? Yeah. We've got multiple pandemics going on.
God. It's a mess. It's a mess.
So it's kind of hard to get ticked off at someone when it's like, they're
you try to look at the bigger picture, yeah.
Well, and I've spent 20 years in the contact center industry, and I am so desensitized. I have heard so much abuse. I have heard everything under the sun. There is nothing I don't think someone could say to me that would put me in a horrible mood, because I've literally heard everything.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that I know anyone's worked that's worked in the contact center. I love you, brothers. I love you, sisters. Man, everyone in between. I love you all. Because it is a tough job. It's usually low pay. But again, you focus on quality. You bring the right people in. You send the right product out. You focus on that quality. You're taking care of a lot of these problems.
And you're not going to have those issues. Yeah, no, it's true.
And I just to even kind of jump back, and I don't mean to get political here, but like, for example, people talk about police reform. I'm not, I think that this could be another podcast. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the defund police. I think we should reform police and add more training. I think in a lot of cases we're adding people, because it's hard. I mean, who'd want to be a cop nowadays? Right? Like, who'd want to be a police officer to begin with? One, and then two, you think about considering that you start out with $50,000 a year. And there's a greater chance, and I hate to say, there's a greater chance of a police officer getting shot than probably someone sitting at a desk. And it's just like, I feel like, why not have more training? Why not get better candidates? Not just people that maybe they could have post-traumatic stress disorder, and there's rushing people into being a police officer. We're not spending the time with candidates. Again, it's going back to quality.
Yeah, we're going to have a show about the cops.
Yeah.
Because we're like, there's a lot to say to that.
Well, listen.
For the record, I do support defunding the police. I do, I don't support the cops. Yeah. You're more likely to get killed as a pizza driver than you are a cop. I could go on and on, but that's not the purpose of this episode. We'll have to do that one day. It's going to be a very interesting
episode, and
I
knew, and I even prefaced that.
But yeah.
Before I said that, I saw the look in your eye. I'm like, oh, here we go. But this is going to take another 40 minutes. But, that's the thing about our podcast.
Right.
We break bread with the enemy. From Pangea, everyone's welcome, and we welcome all thoughts.
Well, what would be the point of having a podcast if your only goal is to shout down the other person, or just be like, I'm just right, you're just wrong? It's like, then don't have the, what I mean?
Go watch CNN or Fox News. That's all I ever see when I watch that stuff.
You know what I mean? So I'm not here to argue with anybody necessarily. We're going to disagree, but But we'll get to that.
Yeah, and again, we love to get your thoughts. Hit us up, Hotbox, Josh Talk Wrestling @gmail.com. Yep, I did not stutter. That is exactly the email we're going to use. Josh Talk Wrestling @gmail.com. Hit us up in the hot box. We'll get all your thoughts on that. But no, man, all thoughts are welcome here. That's what we do. But no, we want to circle back. 80s, 90s Pizza Hut. I went on a huge tangent, but really what I wanted to focus on is that company pizza in the 80s and 90s showed what quality can be. And Josh, just seeing your eyes light up about these different products. And yes, it's stupid, but you know what? The world is a crazy place. And why not? Let's have some fun. Let's have some, some gross pizza every once in a while. Let's get excited about some stupid cups. Let's forget about everything that's going out there for a while. So companies, start focusing on quality. Care about your users. Let's make it a better world.
Yeah.
And we as people, as users, make it better for the company. Don't give their customer service people a lot of crap. And again, we've said before, break bread with the enemy. Try to be nice to people. Try to work on your quality interactions with people. I am guilty of it too.
We all are.
We all are. We have to work on that. Even just a smile. Kylie Ray, one of my favorite pro wrestlers, she says peace begins with a smile.
Right.
So think about that. You're walking by someone, instead of looking the other way, at least smile. At least then they know you're not going to try to beat them up or something. What else we got? What else we got here?
Quality. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree, but like I said, I mean, some companies are going to do it and others are not going to do it. You know what I mean? And then there's always the company that kind of they seem to vacillate back and forth between, being halfway decent and being shitty. Like we see that with a lot of companies.
Well,
I mean,
it's all about money. WWE,
that's
for
the thing.
example, I mean, and not to bring back wrestling, but WWE is a way that they are an entertainment company. I mean, here's the thing. You look at their pay-per-view Crown Jewel. If no one shows up in that arena, they still make $10 million.
Yeah.
So they make $10 million plus the concessions, plus whatever else, plus whatever everything else. It's just like
same with this NBC deal.
Right.
Like they already made a shit ton of money. They like I always say, they could have Vince McMahon just go out to the middle of the ring and take a shit in the middle of the ring, and they would still make X number of dollars, no matter what. Like they don't have to do a damn thing. And going back to why I dislike WWE now is because you're a company that's there to make money, but you're still a creative enterprise.
I don't know that they are anymore.
Well, that's the thing. Like they're forgetting about that, but that's kind of how it should be. You know what I mean? Like you still have to have bookers and creative booking.
They're making money going the other way, though. That's the point. They're going to sell off.
That's the thing. They don't even have to worry about. They can fire Bray Wyatt, and I realize I haven't been following WWE, but I feel like that's kind of a bad move, probably from a fan's point of view. For WWE, they just see it as, well, we've shed some talent, and we don't have to pay that person because WWE, the brand, is more important than any single performer or team in WWE now. And it's so bizarre because you think back to Attitude Era. Of course, we always harp on the Attitude Era, but it's true. People watched it because of the characters, The Rock, and
right.
You knew what you were going to get, but it was because of these.
You didn't actually know. That's the thing. There was a lot more ad libbing. They had outlines to their promos, but you didn't know what they were going to say from night to night.
You're going to get some must-see TV, is what I'm.
Yeah. Okay, I got you.
Taking a gamble here.
Right.
This is going to suck. You're like, no, The Rock's going to be there. Stone Cold's going to be there. There's probably going to be surprises. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
It's so fucked up and kind of disgusting to me that a company can reach a point, become large enough, and that's really how they're able to do this, right? Is because they're so fucking huge and they have their fingers in all these things, and they have.
But we do it. We are the ones that show up at the ticket gates. No one's forcing us to go to WWE events. We are the ones getting subscriptions. The masses that are buying the tickets and allowing it to happen.
That's the thing. I think CM Punk said he called it Stockholm syndrome in a way for some people. I mean, if you like WWE, go for it. I'm not shitting on that. I'm not going to shit on that. I'm just saying, like, for some people, I feel like it's just because all their friends watch it. It's just something they did every Monday night. My girlfriend was talking about, like, she was with her friends one day, and they would just watch Raw, and they wouldn't actually be watching it, though. It was just a ritual. You come over, you have a couple drinks or whatever, and you watch Raw, you talk through the half of the thing. You don't pay attention to half of it, except for when you hear the crowd start yelling. And then you look up briefly, and then you go back, and maybe you complain about it. So it's like, and not everybody's like that. There are a lot of people who are still super enthused, and good for them. But I feel like there's a lot of people who just kind of are locked into just the culture of it. This is what you talk about maybe at your job, at the water cooler, or with your friends, or with your family. It's just always been that way because Raw has been around forever, and this is just what you do.
Well, those are the different types of wrestling fans. Like WWE, they cater to more of the masses. Like they're catering to the fans that are like, oh yeah, Stone Cold and The Rock, and then they sort of jump ahead. Then there's like John Cena, and they jump ahead like 10 more years. They're focusing on like the masses, the WrestleMania fans. And to borrow a line from one of my favorite podcasts, Two Heels and a Face, their podcast really their central theory is that all wrestling fans have something to bring to the table. And I mentioned that before. I think WWE fans have something to bring to the table. I think even the extreme, raging, game changer GCW fans have something to bring to the table. And a lot of wrestling fans in the community don't like GCW fans, but I'm the first to say why. That's
really?
the wrong thing. Yeah, well, that's a whole other podcast.
Gatekeeping or?
Well, that's a whole other podcast. But
Okay.
that's just my sort of thought. Like I think every fan, like Two Heels and a Face, every fan can bring something to the table. Whether you only know about the classics or the masses, or you're only around for the Attitude Era, or you're a hipster that only goes to the independent shows,
right,
or you're someone like me that watches it all. I think we all can bring something to the table. But yeah, that was my problem with WWE, is that they aren't really a wrestling company. To your point, when they released Bray Wyatt, I was like, I mean, that's like an ingenious character, one of those like Goldust 3-dimensional characters.
Yeah.
The fans loved it. It was so hot. Like, if you can't get over as Bray Wyatt in WWE, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But the good thing about this is this sort of deflation, if you will, of WWE, of all their talent, all this talent they've shedded.
Yeah.
It's helped out the wrestling industry. Impact Wrestling has got more ratings. AEW is now the -- cable show on TV. That's better than Walking Dead.
That's
better than football. Like, they are back. Wrestling is back to being the #1 show. There's Ring of Honor. There's New Japan. There's everyone. All the talent that WWE has let go, that's on them.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When I watched Rampage recently, I hadn't kept up. I was amazed by who was on AEW now. I'm like,
Roman Reigns is on AEW
show.
now.
Almost, right? Like, I was like, Big Show.
Yeah.
And
Mark Henry,
I
CM
was
Punk,
like,
of course.
Rusev went over. He's Nero now.
Nero,
like, okay, yeah. Like, CM Punk, of course, came back.
Christian.
I was surprised to see Christian
Impact
in a promo.
champion, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I was just like, holy shit, Sting, of course. You know, we knew about Sting, but I mean, that is great. That is great in a great way. It's like, it's like it's almost like the accelerationism, where you know, you want things to just things got so bad at WWE, just something had to give, and there was like this exodus slow.
And so that's the thing, that they're the alternative. WWE is still catering to the masses. Honestly, WWE is going to sell themselves to NBC. They'll become just another little sideshow, little app on the Peacock thing, which is fine. And whether or not, what they do from here, I don't know, but it'd be cool if like Vince and Triple H somehow sold and Stephanie sold everything to NBC, and then Triple H started his own business.
You think that would happen?
I don't know. I mean, I think that Triple H has enough people. I think that people saw Triple H's vision. What he did with the original NXT was phenomenal. And actually, who was it? Enzo said this, so I won't take credit. I think he was the first one that said this, but I 100% agree with him. Enzo and Cass used to be a former tag team from WWE. Enzo was basically saying that NXT started this revolution, not AEW. Which, before that, it was like before NXT, it was always like WWE had the big guys versus the little guys, and the big guys always went over. Wasn't very progressive on several different fronts.
Vince just like the big guys,
and NXT sort of changed all that. It was much more diverse. We're talking not only just big guys, but little guys, different races, giving females opportunities across the board. More showing. And so I think NXT broke that, and it actually focused on not only like creative, but also focused on good wrestling. Yeah, it was basically a polished version of the independent scene, which is awesome.
Don't forget, I mean, it was great wrestling too. But yeah, you talked about the writing or the creative. Yeah. They didn't really insult your intelligence nearly as much as you get with it. And I thought that was a big deal. Right, exactly. But so I mean, again, I think just to kind of wrap that point up, it's come down to quality, and focus on your interactions, quality, and it might be someone like, let's say if maybe you're talking to your better half or a friend or something, and you're on your phone, put the phone in your pocket. Just slow down. Be present with that person. The multitasking can wait. The email can wait. The text can wait. Slow down and who knows what tomorrow brings, and just have that interaction with that person. And then companies, the same thing, focus on quality. Like, we gave the example of the 80s, 90s Pizza Hut. We went on this huge tangent, but hey, it's a podcast. It's what we do, right? But focus on that. Like, focus on what you send out the door. That's your name on that. And focus on the quality of that. I really honestly think if we all focused on quality, that would probably take care
about half our problems. But
Well, if everybody just thought a little bit longer, maybe a second longer before the things I said to people sometimes,
have a sense of community.
you'd have things would be a lot better. Because I mean, it's true. It is as cheesy as this sounds. It is all connected because, like you said, you have a bad experience with something. You go and you take it out on a customer service rep. Maybe that person's a supervisor. They take it out on their underling. Then they take it out on maybe their spouse because they're upset about work and their boss just shitting on them for no reason. And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then maybe that person goes back and calls the same company and takes it out on that customer
right.
service.
It's a whole chain reaction. We're all interconnected. That's
right.
That's why you need a sense of community. Is that we as a people, we're all interconnected. And I feel like I'm preaching the choir here, but a lot of people I don't think know that. I think they just kind of walk through day not knowing it. But you got to have a sense of community. I mean,
that's the problem. Is there are people who really do get off on shitting on customer service reps. They think it's funny. They think this person is there to serve them because maybe they get shit on at their job. Again, coming back to that. So this is their chance. So this is their chance to be, the domineering fool. I was friends with a guy for a while who would do that sometimes, and it was just the worst experience to be sitting in the passenger seat. And the lady's like, "Hi, welcome to McDonald's. Well, what can I take your order?" And he's like, and he makes this voice, this cheesy voice, this obnoxious voice. "Oh, I would like 2, cheeseburgers. Are those good burgers?" And just like fucking with him. She's like, "What? What did you say, sir?" Like, "Oh, the bad, just really fucking with him." And then you of course you pay at the one window and then you pick up at the next. And when he gets to the second window, he just snatches the food and squeals out of the. It was the most. I was embarrassed. I felt awful that someone would do this to people. So
I want to say something really quick. Your friend. First of all, I can't believe they're your friend. But second of all, your friend actually is messing up a cardinal rule. There's three types of people I don't mess with. All right, people that know a lot about cars, people that know a lot about computers, and people that handle my food.
Yeah, exactly.
I cannot believe he treated someone that way. You shouldn't treat anyone that way, especially someone that works in the industry.
Yeah.
But someone that's handling your food, you need to be kissing their butt for a variety of reasons.
You just don't do that to people. And like I said, he's not my friend anymore. I wish I could say that he became not my friend anymore because of that incident, but he had a history of problems. But so point is, like, there are people who just get off on this, and I think that may be a rare case, an edge case, versus just someone who's frustrated that their food's late or the food's wrong. This is just someone who's almost like just gets off on it.
Well, and the reality is that they're so busy gaslighting and whitewashing their life that if they actually started focusing on those bandages, taking those bandages off the inner child that was hurt. Someone hurt them. Yeah. No, most people don't. I don't know if you ever saw that movie. We need to talk about Kevin.
Oh yeah.
Most kids don't start off like that. Like
right.
There's usually a lot of things that lead up to it.
Case, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, usually it's something happened to that person.
I mean, nobody's born evil. This whole concept of like that's just a bad seed. He was just always bad. It's like no, I do believe in nurture over nature. I do believe that really has a bigger impact. Yeah. So I'm just saying, like, if you're that kind of person or that kind of person, say something to them or think about what the fuck you're doing. This person already gets abused enough from their bosses. I mean, if you read horror stories about McDonald's, if you get a burn, they tell you to put ketchup on it. That's their solution. Not like first aid, not an actual treatment.
That's not real, is it?
That is real. What? A lot of people have said.
Not anymore, though. This has got to be like from...
Why would that have changed? Like,
come on, lawsuits?
Hey, you would think so, but when you're someone that low on the totem pole, how are you gonna afford a lawyer? They know they got you by the balls sometimes. Some of these places. Anyway, that's just one example. You can research this, look it up. So like what I'm getting at is these people are already shit on. They're already abused. They're not paid that well, generally speaking. I mean, I know in Chicago they got their 15, which is great. But they're still shit on.
Yeah, but that's in Chicago. That doesn't go far, right?
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's still not enough. I mean, yeah, there's a number of reasons. And then the other reason is they're just another human like you and me. They're just trying to do their job and get paid and get the fuck out of here. You don't need to be a prick. So I want people to remember that. Like, sometimes...
It's Genesis. There's too many people causing too many problems and not enough love to go around.
Stop being a dick, I guess is what I'm getting at here,
Well, but, we got to have a sense of community. Facebook, as I understand, has gotten your nerves, right? So you want to use this forum... Yeah, to break it down.
I'm going to get on my little soapbox.
All right,
Facebook perplexes me sometimes. Like, I mean, I guess the thing is that at the end of the day, it's unfettered, unfiltered humanity, and just as long as you have a smartphone or a computer or something, you're able to post whatever you want on there. And if you're a grandma, typing in like search terms and posting it on Facebook, like Metamucil or something.
I've done that.
If you're an
Let's not be
anti-vaxxer,
ageist. I've done that.
You've done that. You've done that too. We've all right. Well, no, it's just I guess at the end of the day it comes down to people. People are so fucking ridiculous on Facebook sometimes. And I made a small list of things that confuse the shit out of me.
Well, you do. You actually have a list here.
I have a small list.
You thought about this. All right.
I was doing my homework, baby.
You have the floor.
When people ask yes or no questions instead of Googling, you're guessing that the people on your friends list know better than the whole of world's information available through Google. So Uncle Bill, whose back hurts and he doesn't work anymore, you're hoping that he can tell you what's wrong with your transmission. Maybe he can. But
right, which is the reason why you would do it.
But why the hell don't you just go to Google and be like, okay, what's this thing? Or I mean, maybe that's a more nuanced question. There's something wrong with the transmission. But if it's a yes or no question, like when does this movie come out? Is this thing available? Does this work on this device? Like,
well, who says you can trust online? Who says you trust online over your friends and family?
Well, I mean, I would say, well, I mean, you always have to consider the source, right? Like, you don't want to go to Fox News to get news.
Well, and this is even from before. Like, people always said, don't believe everything you read. Like, this is from the 40s,
it's
50s,
true.
right?
It's true. But, I mean, it depends what it is, right? Like, if it's, we're going to get to this about the COVID vaccine. I'm going to mostly want to get information from the CDC, reputable news sources that I know that are at least not trying to peddle conspiracies, things like that. Like you're gonna, you have to have a sense of that. So it just kind of drives me nuts. Because what they're doing is they're posting it. They're hoping that people know what they're talking about, and they're going to have to wait and hope that someone does reply and that they reply with something legitimate. It's when you could just go and Google 3.5 seconds, you get it done.
What if they Googled before and they didn't get a good response? They went online.
Well, I mean, of course, then that's the case. But I can nary think of too many things. There's not too many things that you're gonna not get some kind of idea with.
Okay, what else is on your list here, Josh? Let's hear the rest of it.
Liking your own comments or posts.
Okay, that is stupid. All right, I got to take your stance on this. That is stupid.
I just typed that post. That's a pretty good post. I like that. Oh, I'm going to give that a heart. I heart my post. Like, who the hell are you?
Well, the thing is, everyone knows the first 9 likes or sympathy likes. Once you get to 10, then that was a serious post.
That's when you know.
But you need to like it. Sometimes you're like 3 or 4, like, I got to like it to 5, change the algorithm, and people see 5, they want to give me 6 and 7.
Right.
They'll lead to 10. That's what they're trying to do, I would assume. But everyone else knows, like, we click on it, and we're like, wait, you liked your own comment?
Fishing for likes. Just, like, at that point, it because the like becomes meaningless, I feel.
Well, everyone's fishing for likes. Everything they put out there, just like, oh my gosh, this is just so random, and I'm just putting this thing on here, and oh my God, everyone likes it. I can't believe it. You knew what you're doing.
You get that little
You knew what you're doing. You put it on there. You hope everyone wanted to like it. That's fine.
You get that little shot of endorphin, a little bit of a pat on the head. We like this.
It's very similar, like, serotonin, like chocolate,
that's what it
cigarettes,
is, right?
like, it's very similar to that. But I'm not coming from a place of judging. I get social media. This is 2021. What else you got, Josh?
Fake accounts. It's really funny because one time I remember some absurdly attractive woman is trying to message me, calling me handsome, right? And I look at her profile and it's all fake shit. It's, come see my sexy pics at this website, blah, blah, blah. But I look under mutual friends and like this obviously fake profile has like 2 of my friends are friends with her for years. Like, and I just find it funny whenever like there's a fake account. And
they got catfished, didn't they?
Yeah, they just weren't paying attention. They were just like, yeah, I'll add this lady, I guess. Like whatever. Like it's just funny. Fake accounts, whatever. They're just funny to me. I don't know.
They're not funny. You ever seen the show Catfish? I mean, that does some serious damage to people. Now, a lot of those people on Catfish, I'm like, listen, this has been going on for 5 or 6 years. You had to half expect this is going to happen. But they have really done some damage to people on that show.
But are the fake people on like is Catfish about people responding to fake like Facebook messages like this kind of thing?
It's about basically people having relationships online that haven't met someone yet in person. And for whatever reason, their camera's not working, whatever. Catfish is trying to figure out what's going on.
Okay, well,
sometimes it's real. Okay. Sometimes actually is the person. Other times,
that's
most
terrible.
time.
But I mean, this is a little different. This is just trying to get you to some porn site or just steal your credit card information. Not so much like leading someone on in a relationship
or breaking your heart. I mean, listen, I would rather lose my credit card information than have my heart broken. I mean, they're all bad. I'm just saying, a fake account is a fake account is a fake account.
All right, fair enough. I mean,
But yeah, stop doing it. Stop creating fake accounts. We don't. In fact, stop creating accounts on Facebook. We don't need more people on Facebook. We need less people.
Yeah, probably. Well, I mean,
Actually, I shouldn't say that. I don't like how they said that.
Less people on Facebook. Well, less crazy stuff on, like
I think, yeah,
you
I
know,
wanna,
like there should be a 5-day waiting period on most posts. Like, think about it. Do you really want to post
but then it wouldn't be
that?
relevant. But that's interesting. Well, there is a feature on Facebook that you can set up. Like, for example, you can tell it between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. It holds all your posts, and then it lets you say, "Hey, did you want to post
You're
these?"
so drunk.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's actually, I could see that being really helpful for certain people.
Right. No. So to kind of step back on my comment about Facebook, like, part of me is like, yeah, we don't want more people on Facebook, but again, that is kind of the whole, like, core of our positioning here on this podcast is that everyone has a voice.
Right.
Everyone gets a shot at the table, right? So everyone, bad or good or everything in between, should get an account. Let's just hopefully don't create a fake one, because the fake ones are up to no good.
Right. Now you've actually left Facebook a while back, right? Would you care to talk about like what happened with you?
I left in 2015. I would have left after 2016 anyway, with all the garbage that was going on. But I left in 2015, and it kind of came down to I felt like, and it was a conversation I had with a friend, and really it was like Facebook to me felt like it was the nexus of narcissism. There's a lot of great things about Facebook, but it was just constant one-up each other. And I would sit there, and we talked about the serotonin before. I would sit there and post something. I would refresh over and over, just be like, did someone like it? Did someone like it? I'm like, this is stupid. Who cares if anyone likes what I have to say? But then you do, because that's how we communicate as people. And again, I'm not judging. I'm just saying this is the way it is.
Yeah.
And it got to be too much of that. I know there's a lot of good things about Facebook, especially if you're a small business owner. My wife is a successful small business owner. There's a lot of great things, Facebook and social media can do for you, especially Instagram. But I just wasn't using it for the right things. I was using it for the one-ups stuff. I felt like I was designing my life, cutting all the bad parts out and only showing people the good stuff, trying to actually make them feel worse, or at least make myself feel better, thinking they didn't have as good of a life.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Again, I'm not judging people. I'm just saying this is what I felt like I started using Facebook for. So I stepped back. So today I don't really use any social media. Right. Facebook, Twitter. I know how to use them. I have accounts. They're inactive. I don't use them. I do use LinkedIn quite a bit, although that from time to time, to be honest, is getting a bit more garbagey.
Is it? Oh, really?
Well, it used to be professional, but now it's getting some political stuff on there. And I'm like, I'd rather just keep this professional. Yeah. Well, I mean, LinkedIn's no different than Facebook. Okay. I mean, you can report stuff, but I mean, everyone's got a LinkedIn account nowadays. So
I've never used it.
You should get one. There's a lot of good things with LinkedIn in terms of like locating jobs, getting information on employers, interviewers, interviewees, so on and so forth. So.
See, I always took it as like a very corporate white collar type place. Is it open for more?
Oh, absolutely. It's meant to be professional. I've seen people that are retired that have profiles mainly to probably get consulting work of some sort. So yeah, it's meant to be focused around your job. That's what LinkedIn is for. But now it's just kind of slowly some of the politics are working in there, and it's just, I don't know. But anyway, that's the only type of social media I really use. But yeah, I know I left in 2015. I think a lot of it too was, and this is, again, I'm not judging anyone that uses social media. If you got to use it, use it. There's a lot of great things to it. I felt like social media to me was a time suck. It was just sucking all my time. And I'd rather just look out the window and look at a cloud. Look at a stupid cirrus cloud go by and be like, wow, look at that stupid cirrus cloud. That's really cool. Then look at my phone.
Yeah.
And it sounds dumb. And probably anyone listening to this is like, you're stupid. And you're right, I am stupid. But I wanted to, I would rather look at something like a cloud than my screen all the time. Phones are good. My phone is my sidekick. I love my phone. I don't need to look at it all the time, though.
Right.
Again, I'm not judging. This is me.
Sure.
Everyone else do their thing. What it is, I'd rather just take in what's going on and see a cloud. Okay, or maybe just look across the street and see someone walking and rather just focus on the moment of what's happening than always looking at my phone. That's what my phone, for example, is always muted. My phone is always muted. Because I check my phone about 5 to 10 minutes anyway. Like everyone's always on their phones. I'm checking it every 5 to 10 minutes to see if I have any notifications anyway. So I always have it on mute. Now, my wife hates it because she tries to get a hold of me. She's got to call me 5-6 times in a row and I'll finally pick up. But to me, it's about living in the moment. I see it all the time. Like, maybe it's just the baby boomer generation. It's something left over from when they had phones. But every time their cell phone rings, it's an announcement. Hey, such and such, your phone's ringing. Like, oh my gosh, it's like you found gold. Everyone, the phone's ringing. Come check this out. I found gold. Come check this out. The phone's ringing. And everyone's got to stop what they're doing and answer the phone. Why? You have voicemail. There's text message. You don't have to answer that phone call right now.
Right.
Enjoy the moment. I've seen my dad. My dad's been driving before. He got a phone call, so he's like hitting his jacket all over trying to look for his phone while he's driving. I'm like, just focus on driving. Who cares? We're not expecting a call. You're retired. Ain't nobody trying to call you right now. Like,
what's so important?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's just it's one of those things where I think that we don't live in the moment too much. We spend too much time on our phones, which isn't a bad thing. And again, I'm gonna pull myself back because my phone is my sidekick. It's how I keep my banking organized, my social life organized, my family stuff organized, my work stuff, everything organized. It's how I keep, it's a one-stop shop to keep it all organized. And I love it for that, but it's got to be controlled. And I have to figure out how to use the technology more efficiently and better and enjoy the world around. Because who knows what tomorrow's going to bring, right?
Right. Well, I mean, it's not right. It's not the phone's fault, right? It's this attitude that we've kind of developed of like everybody's like you watch these ads and they're always like you lead a busy life. You need something that you can grab and go because you're always on the run, always on the move. And we kind of have this attitude now of like Americans are workaholics.
Absolutely.
And we hate our jobs. And compared to other countries, it's like a fucking nightmare to them. Like, you know, they'd be like, what are you guys doing working 5 days a week? 9 to 5, 9 to 6?
Yeah.
We're kind of taught to brag about it. And we're taught to like, oh, I work 60 hours a week to have this life. And you're just lazy and this and this and that. And instead of like, you need to, you know, emphasizing a balance of you know, working good, you know, to have a good work ethic. Yes. But, you know, take time for yourself. And like, unfortunately, like some companies, like you were talking about using benefits from a company. I mean, that is a good idea. And that's the ideal, right? It's just sometimes companies, they kind of make you feel like you can't take that time off.
The house always wins.
Yeah.
So
like,
you got to work with that, you know, right?
Like,
right.
Stuff like that. And it's like, we glorify overworking. We glorify like having too many jobs. We glorify this and we don't get paid enough.
Well, we only live once, and we want to be stuck working like nonstop. Like I think a lot of it too is we're obsessed with equilibrium. You know, we love to look at our phone, see no notifications, see our text messages are answered. There's no phone calls returned. We can archive our emails. Social media is caught up, and there's no work emails. Oh my gosh, a work email came in. I got to answer right now. This Facebook post. Or I'm going to take care of these two things, then I'm done. Take care. Oh my gosh, another email came in. The thing is, it never ends.
Yeah.
It's like they say, chasing the dragon's tail. The work will always be there. So that's like when I work, I'm working hard. You know, when I work 6:30 to 3:30 every day, Monday through Friday, those hours I am getting everything in. I'm working my tail off. Outside of that, my family gets my hours. But a lot of it's being efficient with your time, knowing when you can say, you can stop. It's also if you have like a remote job or an hourly work of your salary. I mean, my goodness, if your salary, my heart goes out to you. I worked for a company, I won't mention the name, but you know, I was working 80 hours a week, and that's why I left. Because it was like, it's not worth it. I was making some good money, but I'm like, I didn't get to see my family.
Were you salaried in that position?
I was salaried in that position.
So you were, would you say you were working for free sometimes?
Absolutely. When you're salary, absolutely.
That's
yeah,
awful.
absolutely. When
That's
you're salary,
awful.
I mean, that's,
But I mean, that, you know, you didn't have much choice. It's either you take the position or you don't, right?
Well, right. Exactly. The thing about it is typically with those positions, you get a little more freedom.
Yeah.
You can kind of leave early. You can come late, but you're always sort of on the clock because you never know. Something happens at the building. There's a staff thing you need to take care of. A new project rolled out. Yada, yada, yada. But suffice to say, it was like I'm working 80 plus hours a week and I wasn't seeing my family. And this is not the life I want.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of Europeans, you know, you mentioned before the sort of U.S. workforce. We are workaholics.
Yeah.
In fact, I saw a stat recently in the past couple of years that we are actually taking 2 weeks less vacation than the Japanese, who are considered the sort of standard workaholics at one point. And this is pre-pandemic, pre-recession. So this is when things were kind of, you know, normal, for lack of a better term. But, you know, that said, we are working too much. That same company where, you know, I was working 80 hours a week, for example, they had what was called, it was flexible time off, FTO, where you basically get unlimited time off as long as the job gets done.
Okay. Here's
the thing. At that particular year, I did some traveling, went to Europe, took 30 days off. Now, before I left, I made sure, well, you know, back in January, you're sitting down with your manager, having this sort of talk about, you know, what are your goals are that year. I had every single goal lined up, you know, what I wanted to do, and I got every goal accomplished. At the end of the year, one of the things that came up was like, hey, you took 30 days off. I'm like, well, yeah, but the job got done. I used the flexible time off. It then became a discussion like, well, you know, on average, I use like 14 days off, and other people like managers like you take like 14 days off. So I'm like, that's exactly proves my point. I've heard it before. The companies offer flexible time off, unlimited time off, because people take less time off in those cases. Even though I got all my job done, I took 30 days. I figured out a way to skirt around the rules and still get the job done. They hated it.
Yeah,
they hated it. But I'm like, I don't see the problem here. But again, it was one of those things they brag about. Well, I work this, and I have this. I only took 15 hours of PTO. I saw on LinkedIn some CEO bragging about working 105 hours a week. I'm like, you just don't know how to delegate. What, you're bragging about that? You're not a good CEO.
You're bragging that you're bad.
I would take that down right away. That's not a good post. What are you doing? So I think a lot of it is it's that quality. It gets back to that quality of life. Is it something you actually want? And so again, it's the quality thing, getting back to that equilibrium. We're so obsessed with having a clean slate, making sure everything is taken care of. Folks, those notifications are always going to come in. You just got to give yourself something like, hey, say 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, whatever your schedule is. And maybe it's 3:30, 4 in the afternoon. Maybe you work overnight. I don't know. Whatever, time, you've got to start telling yourself, all right, I'm not going to respond to any more clients tonight. I'm not going to respond to any more emails tonight. Because you know what? If you don't respond to your boss at 3 a.m, or if you don't get back to that client at midnight, they ain't going to care. In fact, if you respond right away, they're going to probably be like, they need to get a life. So anyway, ignore it.
And if your boss does care, you shouldn't be working there, because fuck that guy.
Well, and that's the thing is, when I was working 80 hours, anytime after 5:30, if I send an email, I never expected a response until the next business day.
Yeah.
So that's also the other thing too. It kind of goes back and forth, but I think a lot of it gets back down to the quality of it. We were talking about Facebook, why I left 2015. It was a time suck. I would rather sit around, look at clouds, look at people walk by, look at a kid eat ice cream with their parents, and look at a dog play around with its owner, or just see like a tumbleweed blow by. Just be in the moment. Yeah. That to me seems really more exciting than always being stuck on my phone. Again, just me, and I ain't judging any folks. If you got nose in your phone, keep it there, and if you like it, keep it there.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of like back in, I remember there was an editorial, you could pull it up online, I think it was from the 50s or something. It was somebody complaining that everybody on the train had their nose in a newspaper, and the art of conversation was lost.
Love this.
And I mean, there is merit to what he said. It's true, and you could see the photos, and that everybody was just, all the businessmen in the morning, you're reading the newspaper, and now it's become the phone, and in the future maybe it'll be something else. Everybody's just holodexing the whole time, or
right.
Whatever it is, But I mean, there is something to be said about like still keeping. Because it's true, I feel like if there were studies back then, maybe there were, but it probably did show, people became a little less social on average, according to polling. They identified themselves as a little less social. And then over the years, maybe we got a little less social more and more and more. I don't think it'll ever go away fully, but I get what you're saying. Like, especially if if you work and she works, you need to use whatever 8 hours that you have together or whatever. Don't have your nose buried in TikTok or whatever.
Well, and to your
there's
point,
nothing wrong with going for it a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah.
Well, it's time management, and to kind of jump back to your point. Yeah, I love that where it's like we were always sort of judged, like, look how horrible we've gotten. We all got our noses in phones. Yeah. Well, 100 years ago we had our noses in newspapers, but the reality is that there is something to be said for introverts, extroverts. Ambiverts. I'm an ambivert. I get my energy from within sometimes. Other times I'm like blah 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 blah, like mugging like Jim Carrey would in one of his early movies, just kind of going nuts and stuff. That's just how I am. Not bipolar, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that I am an ambivert. I get my energy from within sometimes, and sometimes I get it from people. It took me a while to figure that out, because I always thought like there's sometimes I just feel like reading a book or watching a movie, and I feel guilty about that when I'm told to go outside, but I just don't feel like it right now.
Yeah,
and it's okay.
Nothing wrong with that.
Do what you do what you got to do, but there is something to be said, for that. So I think we should allow people, their space to be ambiverts, introverts, extroverts, or whatever the hell you want to. But we have to remember this, and this is where I think that getting back to as a people, everything is so polarized. Like nowadays, it's one polarization after another. It's political, it's medical, it's biblical. It's always going to be something next, right?
Right.
We forgot that we need each other, and this is getting back to quality, getting back to a sense of community. We need each other to survive. Back in the day, if someone was hungry, they didn't pull out a phone and go to Grubhub or go to a Burger King. They had to get like
Yeah,
11
no,
people together
tribe had to, yeah.
hunt a buffalo because one person didn't take a buffalo down. And
Right.
you had to take that buffalo. And I guarantee you there wasn't a buffalo park right outside your tribe. You know, you had to like probably go miles and miles to find a buffalo, drag it back to camp.
Yeah.
It took 11 people. Once you got it back to camp, people had to, you know, as far as take
Kill
the
it,
hair
clean
off
it.
and
Yeah.
use all the resources. There's a whole spiritual thing with that. There's a whole process involved. We forgot what it's like to work with people. We need each other. The whole world, we actually work together. Believe it or not, we all work together.
Yeah.
We might be in different industries, but whether you serve me a burger
yeah.
on Burger King or you were my Uber driver on the way here to the recording, listen, you were all part of my day and I was all part of yours.
You might not know it, but yeah. Total strangers, people I've never met, have handled my food.
Yeah.
And I'm trusting that total strangers are moderating that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because total strangers are doing this. Because it's true. It's true. I mean,
But it also goes to show how much power we have and we have a sense of community.
Right.
We can make the world a better place. And I feel like all too often everyone's just pissed off. We should be thinking about that. Why is everyone so pissed off? You know, and that's where I think a lot of these problems we start working backwards from. But I think a lot of it, you know, the peace, as they say, starts within yourself. It starts within your home, then starts within your building, within your neighborhood, and then it grows out from there within your ward, you know, within your state, within the country, the world, and so on and so forth. You know.
And I mean, I'm going to pivot a little bit off of what you're saying here. Is I mean that's all well and good if you're dealing with like let's talk about like you're talking about opposition and people on both sides of the fence, right?
Yeah. And oftentimes it doesn't have to be a fence too. Sometimes some of us are sitting on both sides of it.
If you need a minute to do some research or something, I understand that. But at some point, you know, I guess I'm tying this into our anti-vaxxers topic, right?
Okay.
So let's say vaxxed versus anti-vax. But for me, it comes down to a lot of science and facts and logic versus ignorance and fear and party tribalism, let's say. And the problem is like what you said is good on a certain level, but I think it only works when you're dealing with people who share the same reality as you, who can agree that the sky is blue, the water is wet. But if you're dealing with someone who literally just won't believe facts, can't, you know, empirical evidence just doesn't matter. I think that unfortunately a lot of that goes out the window. Because what you're talking about is reasoning with people and saying, hey, let's talk about this. Let's work together to, we'll pull our resources. We'll work together to build this. We'll do whatever it is, right? But all of that is possible because everybody believes that they're working on the same thing. They're on the same page. They believe it's going to work. They agree that things are real or not real. They agree that,
there's no common ground. It's kind of like we were talking before, one polarization after another, right?
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, the thing is, like nowadays, facts are optional. Like what's her name? Kellyanne Conway famously coined alternative facts. You can't have alternative facts. If I say water is wet and your alternative fact is no, it's not, it's dry, that doesn't work. But you have people who literally think that's okay.
Well, now we're in a situation that no one knows what to believe. It's like someone that listens to, or watches Fox News versus someone that, watches NPR, as Obama mentioned. You're on two different worlds. And like everyone's like, if someone says, well, Fox News is crap, it's like, well, CNN's crap and NPR's crap and PBS News, all this news is crap. Newsmax is the one you got to watch. And like, no, Newsmax is crap. You don't know what to believe. A lot of people don't know. Some people, the masses don't know what to believe.
Well, that's the thing. And unfortunately, it comes down to like people who are too dense to understand, to disseminate this information as either real or false, like, right? And it sucks because there were literally two studies, one more recently than the other, but you can look it up and I'll try and find a link to it in the description if I'm going to cite a specific study, but it basically said that generally in their study they found that people in the conservative camp, those that are less likely statistically to be vaxxed they put it nicely, they put it scientifically, they said they have deficiencies in information dissemination, which really just means they're dumb. So I feel like, unfortunately, it does come down to like people that are dumb, that used to keep their mouths shut and used to just be like, okay, well, if the CDC says this is the case, we're just going to go with it. Now they're empowered to just shoot off their mouth, to say whatever, to go out there. It used to be just crackpots, and now it's soccer moms and regular people and businessmen you hear about who, on the extreme end, they fall down the QAnon group. On another end, maybe they're just anti-vaxxers. Other people believe the earth is flat. But the thing is, Donald Trump and the Republican Party and conservatives nowadays have kind of empowered that kind of attitude of like, I don't believe it. Everything that I disagree with is fake news. Science isn't everything, blah, 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 all this stuff. And so it's like I feel like those were old rules. What you were talking about was like the old rules of like work together, rationalize, talk rationally, and just understand, and you'll find common ground. I totally agree with that if you're dealing with people who can accurately understand the world around them.
That's fair enough. We don't have a common ground. And yeah, you're right. Because the issue with that then is on the other end of that, and again, that was kind of, from a liberal perspective, but from, Trump perspective or Trump conservative, which there is a huge difference between, conservative and Trump conservative and Republicans and Trump Republicans.
Right.
Huge difference. But
right.
Let's just say from their perspective, they're also saying the same thing about liberals, saying, no, you've got it wrong. You guys are making up this news. And that's what they're told. And so so sort of on both. One end.
A lot of it does come down to the media.
Right. And so that's part of the issue is that there is no common ground, which I think is scary in itself. And then someone's like, well, okay, let's just have the Ministry of Truth. Boy, this sounds a lot like, Orwellian 1984, but then
that's
like
the trouble.
Who watches the Watchmen type situation. And there we are. And so really my way around it is, as I have found is I follow Fox News. I also follow CNN, NPR, BBC, news. I follow a lot of different news sources because I want to see what everyone's kind of saying. I can't just depend on one news source in this sort of post-truth world. Like you have to kind of look around and have a couple good, couple sources. And it's hard because there's a lot of liberal and there's a lot of conservative news out there. So you have to, my sort of idea is sort of look at, run the gamut and kind of get an opinion from that.
You say liberal and conservative as if those were actually opposite ends of the spectrum. Nowadays, a liberal is much more conservative. We would have to talk about left-wing media, which there really is no mainstream left-wing media. I'm going to plug the Turks. The Young Turks is where I get a lot of my news. I get a lot of my news from leftist media because like CNN's not fake news. Okay, I'm not going to sit there and say it's made up fake news, but it always has a slant, right? Because CNN is.
And all news really does, wherever, regardless, all news does.
Even the progressive, Young Turks, they have their slant of their progressivism. But the thing is, they don't hide it. When one of the newscast, when Anna Kasparian or something says like, and this sucks, and the reason it sucks is because hey, I'm from the progressive viewpoint that this is how it should be. So I'm going to say this sucks, and we're going to report on it in another way. So they don't try and hide it. I feel like CNN tries to give that veneer of neutrality, and it's just not possible. Go back to like English class when you were learning about very, very light journalism in 7th grade, and you learned about bias, and they said bias is going to happen everywhere. It's always going to happen, no matter how neutral you try to be, because no matter what you do, there's always going to be some kind of decision making on the part of the author, and even just how you
and
arrange,
executive producers, the network, so on and so forth. Yeah.
So there's always bias, but CNN tries to present it as no, we're totally neutral. It's like, give me a fucking break. You are a fiscally conservative news source that is socially liberal, but you're still not leftist. Like they have so many more conservative conservative speakers on than progressive. It's just a fact. Than leftists.
And I to that end, one thing I would actually like to commend is PBS NewsHour. Although I do think it does go a little bit more of a liberal route. I will say I like how they sort of, and this is maybe something I think a lot of, it's something that PBS does, and maybe other networks do, maybe it's not as well. They will, as far as they'll show the topic, kind of like try to be as neutral as possible,
right.
And then they have both sides. They'll have a conservative and a liberal side to it immediately.
There you go.
To me, it's kind of nice because you sort of hear again. You have to wonder what's actually neutral, but they are trying to be as neutral as possible. It's like sort of public.
Well, if the moderator's neutral,
right,
just
exactly.
let the speakers,
and then they have the so then you're kind of getting both sides. To me, that's nice, and I feel like this polarization it's going to hurt us in the long run. It's already hurting us. And George Washington said, having a two-party system is going to hurt this country.
Yeah.
And it basically turns, our elections into sporting events. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of scary. In a perfect world, during the debates, I would see 5 different candidates. Democrat, Republican, independent, grassroots, so on.
You see that in other countries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I kind of like to sort of see it that way. And maybe in some cases, the top 2 winners, number 1 was the president. Number 2, whoever had the most votes was the vice president.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
I mean, think about that. Could you Biden and Trump as president and vice president?
That would be very interesting.
Talk about checks and balances. Nothing get done, but maybe that wouldn't be a bad thing, right?
We can go into Trump could be its own episode. What I'm getting at is the media is to blame on a lot of this. Because unfortunately, stupid people and crazy people do have a seat at the table.
And they should.
And everyone
should.
And the reason is because who's to decide what the line is? who's to decide, oh, you have an IQ of 80, but you're okay, but if you have an IQ of 70 or anything or any standardized testing, we know that a lot of standardized testing is questions about it being inherently racist in some ways. You can't, you know what I mean? There's no way to quantify it. So as much as you'd like to say, well, if you're just too stupid, we won't let you vote or something, you just can't do that. So it falls to our media, who unfortunately it's basically billionaires paying millionaires to make us hate the poor. While I commend that you do watch Fox News and CNN and everything, it's to me a lot of that's a waste of time, because it's just like Fox News literally went to court to defend Tucker Carlson, and their defense was no reasonable person would recognize this as real news, and they won the case based on that. You can go look, like they literally are admitting that it's horseshit. So I don't know. I mean, that's just me. Like,
well,
I mean,
no. So
you can watch whatever you like.
Well,
of
that's
course,
fine.
But,
yeah, my thing is I'm not taking any side of any news source. In fact, speaking of before time management, with work, I do the same thing with news. I'm not a news junkie anymore.
Right.
It sounds like I'm a news junkie. I go through 7 different sites, but I have certain times of the day I go through it, unless there's a mega event that happened or something that day. Then I'll check the news, obviously. But yeah, generally speaking, I check it a small window each day, go through all the sites, kind of see what's going on. To me, it's not a waste of time, because, I do have a good understanding of what's going on, and it gives me a general idea of what's going on. But yeah, I mean, here's the thing. The other thing too, which kind of stings, is that we'll never actually fully know the full story of anything. You understand?
Well, no.
We'll never actually, everything gets so filtered any way you look at it. I don't mean to be a conspiracy theorist. I'm just saying that's just how it is.
Oh, sure.
We'll never know the full story of everything. So, but that said, I don't know, looking at as many news sources as possible, kind of running the gamut, I get an understanding of what's maybe going on. I can still form my own opinion. And I think that's mainly what we should be doing, is thinking for ourselves, not just focus on social media, not just focus on friends, not just focus on Googling things, not just focus on what the TV says, but, what are your personal thoughts? What have you seen? And kind of work backwards. And then your personal thoughts, are those good for you? Are they good for humanity? Do those make sense?
That's the thing. A lot of people will think it makes sense, and it doesn't. You know what I mean? They delude themselves. I mean, the thing about Fox News,
right? I guess we kind of all do that. We all justify.
Yeah. Oh, sure. I mean, we all
means, right?
You all got to pick your layer of bullshit, right? But I mean, the thing about Fox News is, like, it'd be one thing if the information was factually correct and then it was spun a certain way. But half the time, the information is literally just factually incorrect. And I guess that's where I come from, of like, don't even bother. But I mean, I'm not saying, you could, I respect whatever you're going to do, obviously. Yeah. But at least CNN, generally speaking, the information is factually correct, but they might spin it a different way. Like, that's just my thing.
I wish we had a news source that was 100% correct all the time. And that's what it used to be, is we all watch the same news. Mm-hmm. I mean, Fox News came out, 1996 or so? So, I mean, they've only been around like 20, 25 years. Yeah.
Yeah, so, it's been around for a little while.
And CNN's got to be pushing 50, I think.
Something like that. They were the first to do what they did. Yeah.
But that's the thing is, but that also, it's like we used to have one news source. Was that a bad thing? Now everyone has these different news sources, and that's the problem. It's like,
I think it's better to have more news sources.
Yeah.
You just need to have. We need to teach people, youngsters, at early, that the critical thinking skills to disseminate bullshit from real news. Like, sometimes there's an sometimes they'll have ads that look like a news story, and you and I are reasonable people, and we're like, oh, that's horseshit. We know it's an ad. It's why would the news be talking about this vitamin supplement and then telling me how I can order it? But there's people out there, unfortunately, who. Okay, you can't do anything about somebody's IQ. They're just a dunce. But at least you can teach them, like, hey, if you see certain things, you could teach them some critical thinking skills so they're less dangerous to the rest of us, I guess.
Well, I think we could also teach companies to be less, predatory. And it sounds like they might be running certain ads in certain areas. I mean here's the
problem is they lobby for that. It's hard to,
And this is coming from a kid who, when I was on a college campus, they signed me up for a credit card. And I remember I said this before. I was walking through a class. I was rushing through. They're like, "Hey, once you sign up for this credit card, you get a free T-shirt." I'm like, "Oh, I probably won't get approved for it." Like, I get a free T-shirt anyway. I'm like, "Really?" So I applied for it. Didn't know what was going on. Yeah. Grabbed the T-shirt. Went to Humanities, and then like 2 weeks later, I get a credit card in the mail and it said, "You've got $5,000."
Wow.
And I didn't know how the credit card works. So I'm like, "Well, let's go take a look." And so I took it to a gas station nearby. Got a hot dog, a soda, and chips. Swipe the card, and they're like, "All right, there you go." And I got the receipt, and I was like, "Wow, it's that easy to spend the money."
Yeah.
And so I was like, literally, I'd be at a bar. I'm like, "Hey, shots on me." I'd be throwing the credit card down.
Yeah.
I didn't care. I'm like a early 20-something. I'm like, I'll get famous. I'll win the lottery or something and pay this off. No big deal, right? And it was one of those things I didn't realize. The APR on it. This is about 20 years ago. The Obama administration knocked a lot of this out.
Yeah.
But back then I was charged like a 39% APR.
Wow.
In interest. So, basically for layman's terms, every dollar I spent, I was charged 39 cents.
Yeah.
If you didn't pay your bill on time, they would charge you like, $50 fee. Then there's a late fee. And then
I'm sure there was an annual fee.
The annual fee. Then there's like an overcharge fee. Wow. All that. And these fees, they rack up so quickly. I didn't even know.
What company was this?
I guess I can say it was through Chase.
Oh, wow.
And this is actually before Chase was as big as they were. So I'm hoping I'm not throwing Chase under the bus there. But it's actually something that really happened. But I did learn how to use a credit thereafter. But it was one of those things where, they should not have been there to solicit a credit card to a college student like myself. Because I didn't know what
they knew
credit
what they were
was.
doing.
Well, and I didn't know what I was doing. And,
but in
hindsight, I do
did.
know.
Yeah, they knew what they were doing.
And I don't want to point fingers. I really didn't. I mean, I didn't understand the late fees. There was nothing about that. The sign-up fees, all that. I just didn't know about that. The interest didn't make any sense to me.
Well, they hand you this clipboard with like 800 things at like four-point size type, and you're just like, they're standing there expecting you to sign, and it's like you feel pressure to just sign instead of reading.
I mean, and I'm taking full blame for it and all that, but I'm just saying like it was definitely a predatory thing. So same thing here is I wonder if we do the same thing with our news, which I think we do in some cases. Yeah. We weaponize people.
Well, sometimes people just read the headline, and that's it. Right. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
So where do we go from here? And I think that's the whole thing with this podcast is we talk about everything and nothing. And I don't know. I'm gonna stick to my guns and say, listen, checking several news sources is not the worst thing for you. Josh has got his favorites. You can definitely take those to heart. But I think a lot of it's being a critical thinker, and this goes past the internet. This is something like if you ever wrote a paper in high school or junior high or even college, that you had to have like a reference section. And it was one of those things you never always, I remember my teachers telling me, don't believe everything you read. And then I'd also have teachers say, be the critical thinker. Like just because you found that in a book, what makes you think that author knew what they were talking about? Right. Same with the internet. Yeah. Books and internet, it's the same darn thing. It's just virtual now.
That's the thing. It's always you just got to look at everything case by case basis, because I mean, I've had some people who are anti-vaxxer.
We should probably talk about anti-vaxxer, by the way. That was a topic.
Right, that was the time. Well, we're talking around it, and we're going to get, we're kind of setting things up. You could say they use the fact that science updates things as evidence that science keeps changing. They don't know what they want. The story keeps changing, and it's like I use this on my show. I talked about like back in the day they used to say that like the Earth was about 237,000 miles away from the moon. But then over time, measuring technology got better and it got more accurate. So then it became, I don't know what the number is offhand, but let's say it became, 236.92, right? Like it got more accurate. Yes, the information changed. It's not that science is changing its mind. It got smarter. But people will actually use that as a negative thing because they'll be like, first it was no masks, now it is masks, but I thought the vaccine worked. Well, why do you need the vaccine if we still have to social distance? You keep changing the story.
We have to understand science. It's about testing hypotheses and theories.
That's the thing. It just comes back to we don't teach enough science. We don't have enough respect for science in this country. We put religion over science too fucking much in too many states.
And this is a polarization. This is not a liberal thing. This is not a conservative thing. This anti-vaxxer stuff is across the board.
I mean,
so I don't want to hear people say, "Oh, well, Trump supporters not getting back." No. This has nothing to do with Trump supporters. Nothing to do with conservatives. Nothing to do with liberals. Anti-vaxxers is, as I said, the next polarization. Here we are.
Well, I mean, the trouble is you do have people in the Republican Party specifically discouraging.
Yeah. All right. I mean, there is that leaning. Yes.
I mean, and you could statistically look at the map, and it'll be like red states. 99,000,000% more likely to be unvaccinated and against the vaccine. I'm just saying the type of people that don't get vaxxed also happen to be the type of people who are generally conservative or evangelical. I
know a lot of liberals myself that are unvaccinated too. So
I'm not saying everybody. I mean, there are people who are super paranoid on the left and things like that. But statistically speaking, that is the largest group. You can go look it up and find out. I can link to the article. I
didn't know that.
Yeah, that is the largest group of the unvaccinated. I mean, hey, do your religion. I'm not saying you shouldn't, and I'm not saying you're a fool necessarily. Like you could be a perfectly reasonable person and religious, but if your religion or your religious beliefs are preventing you from believing science that we can prove 100%, or at least within a pretty good level. Like, I mean, there's a big difference between being 10% wrong and 100% wrong. if your beliefs are leading you to put yourselves in danger, it's going against science that has reasonable reason to be believed. These are reasonable statements.
So let's run that back. So like in religion, like, because I'm not familiar with this, maybe you could help me out, but so in religion specifically, how is it saying science? You should not use science. What are sort of the examples that we're sort of hearing from anti-vax
That's the funny thing. That's the funny thing. If you go into let's say the King James Bible, right? For example, that's the most popular. Christianity is the most popular thing in America. So usually when people talk about that, they're usually talking about Christianity, right? So if anything, there is no real. That's the thing. There is nothing in the Bible that I know of that specifically says anything about don't believe science or whatever, right? So they're twisting the words. In fact, they're actually, I found it, I have to verify it still, but there was an article showing that there's a line about in the Bible somewhere in one of the books talking about if you have a disease, you must leave the village, you must stay away from them until the disease has passed. So it's actually, the Bible is specifically endorsing quarantining and social distancing. If anything, the Bible is on the side of science in this particular case. Okay. But the problem is you get people who, they call it the dogma, right? Where it's the additional stuff that's not specifically prescribed, but the church has decided. And I'm not saying that the Catholic Church is telling you to not get vaxxed. In fact, the Pope is saying, wear a mask, get vaxxed, it's okay. But you get people who weaponize religion and they twist it in their own way. Maybe it's not, let's say you have the Church of Christ and they're like, well, we're the Bible Church of Christ, so we believe that you can marry your cousins or this and that. There's always a mutation. To me, it's just reiterations of fan fiction and the author just changes it up a little bit. That's me. So you have people who use religion regardless. I mean, you could say, well, the religion isn't prescribing it, so it's not the religion's fault. Maybe not, whatever, but the fact of the matter is you still have people out there who have groundless, baseless beliefs, including the belief that God's not going to let this, this disease hurt me. I'm one of his flocks. I prayed the illness away, or things like that. I remember I saw a clip of someone interviewing two women who were walking around maskless. They're anti-maskers, and they're literally saying, well, my energy doesn't vibrate at the same frequency as the virus, so I'm not going to get it. And I told my friend that, and she also agrees that she doesn't vibrate at the. And I know that you could say these are edge cases, these are fringe cases, but even if someone's 10% as crazy as those two people, isn't that bad enough?
Those are pretty wild examples. I guess my thought to that would be, why not do both? Why not use science and religion? Because I mean, listen, if you're covered then, right, on both ends.
I mean. Most people would tell you, most people with my stance would say that science and religion are not compatible.
Mainly it just comes down to like the Scopes monkey trial, like the whole thing of evolution, right? Like that's where I feel like it comes down to, because it's like, I don't know. I mean, most churches I've been to, if I presented some science, and maybe it's just my experience, but if I presented an actual scientific experiment, they'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, and I see the facts there, and I see that information, and okay. I feel like that would be my experience. I mean, most churches I've attended.
If you're demonstrating something that doesn't challenge their beliefs or try and change their mind on anything, like you could do like an egg drop experiment or the vinegar and baking powder or whatever it is to make the volcano. You could do that, and that's fine because that doesn't challenge anything. But if you go out there and you start poking holes in using science to poke holes in the fallacies and inconsistencies of the Bible, you are going to get people upset.
You know what? It is probably offensive too. The way you probably go.
I mean, why if you're. If you're safe in your beliefs, why should you be offended? That's how I feel. Like, as long as somebody's not like, you're stupid because of these reasons, that's offensive. But if you say, well, here's why, I believe there is no reason for God, blah, 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 this is all my evidence, da, 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 is that offensive? I don't think that's offensive because they can just say, well, no, I just don't believe you. Well, and that's what they will do. Yeah. But a lot of them will get upset because I feel like a lot of people deep down inside, they know it's horseshit or they have questions, and anytime you try and drudge it up, they get uncomfortable because that's what they were indoctrinated into without any choice as children, and that's what they're with now, and that's where they base their entire life. Their entire worldview is based on bad people will pay the price at the end. So things like that, and then you try and tell them, no, there is no meaning. It's life is what you make of it, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, they're going to get upset, and I understand that. I don't blame you. Like, someone's trying to...
Here's an atheist also doesn't know if there's in fact not a heaven or hell.
That's the thing, but the burden of proof does not go on someone to prove that something doesn't exist. The burden of proof lies on the person who is trying to prove that something does exist. Mm-hmm. I don't need to prove it, but if you're going to tell me it does, you need to prove it. The burden of proof goes on the person making the extraordinary claim, and extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
I tell you what, and I part of me is just like, listen, you should be both praying and getting the vaccine, because I think both those things will not hurt your chances getting out of the pandemic. But I think to me, it's the biggest thing with the anti-vaccine, and it's on one hand, some people, and this is really morbid, some people say, well, if you want to get it, I don't care. The thing about it is, one, that is morbid. We don't want people to die. We really don't. No, and I think we need to make clear about that. Like,
right.
Unvaccinated, vaccinated, we don't want, most people don't want any more people to die, period,
right.
Let alone from this gross virus, right?
Right.
The problem with it is that it keeps mutating, and that's the issue. Is it's not just like, oh, okay, well, we're only the people that don't want to get the vaccine, they're going to be impacted. No, the problem is that we're creating greater viruses with these variants, and they're going to get more stronger and stronger and stronger. We just got to hope that these boosters can keep up with them.
Right.
And so that's the real problem with not getting vaccinated. Now, I have a story here. This is both pro-vaccination and anti-vaccination. So bear with me, all right? Mm-hmm. As long as I can remember, when I was a child, my parents would take me in. I'd get, yearly physical. I'd get all my shots and all that. Yeah, so on and so forth. Got to be about, I think I was in college. And you get away from your parents, and so they're not kind of keeping tabs on you as much. I stopped getting the flu shot. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, every year about February, I would get the flu for about 2 days. Oh. But I also got the flu vaccine. Mm-hmm. Kind of interesting. Starting in college, I just didn't get the flu vaccine. Mm-hmm. And I noticed about maybe 5-6 years later, hey, I had not gotten the flu.
Yeah.
And then, so I actually, since not getting the flu vaccine, I did not get the flu.
Actually, my dad had a similar situation. Twice he got the vaccine. Right. The only 2 times he got the vaccine were the times he got the flu.
Right. So that's weird. That is weird to say. Weird. And so that's something, as far as anti-vaxxers, okay, I can't shush you away. That is an actual thing. That is an actual fact that happened with me. Mm-hmm. That said, as you could, I might be considered an anti-vaxxer pre-2019 for that, because I wasn't getting my flu shot, I guess. That said, it was enough for me. This virus is no joke. Yeah. I went out and got the vaccine. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, that just sounded like a soapbox. It sounded like I'm persuading you. Maybe it sounds like it. I can't tell you what to do. If it sounds persuasive, that's not my fault. That's how you're interpreting it. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying that I think it was the best thing to do. And this is coming from someone that didn't always get vaccines before. This seems like a real deal thing. I got a 1-year-old. I got a wife. Yeah. I got a little puppy. I got friends I want to see. And I don't want to get stuck in lockdown again. So to me, the science is there. I've heard it. I've actually heard from, I know a nurse that is actually an anti-vaxxer. They've mentioned that the vaccine itself, that most vaccines aren't fully approved until 10 years. It's a trial process for 10 years. Like, I understand, I have to believe that science, they've done enough research to show that this is actually going to help someone enough, and they have the actual evidence to show this vaccine. So it's not an actual vaccine. It should just be called a COVID-19 shot. It's not an actual vaccine. It's preventing from if you get it, it won't be as bad. That's kind of the idea, and you hopefully won't be hospitalized or even worse. But that's the thing. So that's, again, my story. It's a real story. I saw this thing. I'm like, listen, this is not the flu. My family got it. My sister got it. My brother-in-law, the kids got it. Thank God my father didn't get it. Mm-hmm. Thank God other people in my family didn't get it. But it is not a joke. And that's where I want to plead with people. Like, I can't tell you to get the vaccine, but maybe you should get it. If nothing else, the thing about this herd immunity, I don't know if it's going to work. I think this thing is growing faster.
The evidence suggests it won't, because you don't. Yeah.
So that's where it gets scary. And so, but again, I know other people on the other side are saying, well, why? There's a lot of hesitation, and I get from there's a lot of hesitation across the board from different groups of people, and not just one certain sector. To be honest, there's a lot of hesitation to getting the vaccine. So I get that, but my hope is that we squash this virus, because I'll tell you, we had this thing dead, and it's rising again. When I'm seeing 180,000 cases, again, I'm coming from a place where I'm not trying to be political. I'm not trying to persuade people. I'm just saying that these are the facts. We're losing people.
Josh,
and people are calling these stats their daughters, their sons, their children, their grandfathers, their grandmothers, their son-in-laws, their great uncles, their friends, their old high school buddies. There's someone that you used to see walking down the street with their dog every day. You're not going to see them anymore. These aren't just stats; these are actual people. And I think we need to get past this, because it's a real thing. I remember when we first started hearing about COVID, they're like, "Oh, well, Spanish flu took 600,000 people away." I'm like, this thing seems pretty deadly. Unfortunately, I think we're going to get there. And 100,000 nowadays would be like 2 million back then
Yeah.
with the technology we have, with the way we should, be able to look at research and the playbooks we have. But again, that's where it's like, to the anti-vaxxers, I haven't seen enough information for you not to get the vaccine. Because to me, you could, again, pre-2019, you could consider me an anti-vaxxer. I had to be a critical thinker, look at what I'm seeing, and believe that actually was a better idea than not getting the vaccine.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Nobody's trying to say this vaccine is the magic anti-COVID shot and you get it
It's a patch,
and you're done.
basically, right?
Yeah, they'll freely say, here's the percentage of how effective it is based on our studies. This is what you know. Here's our information. And, there's a profit motive behind it for Pfizer. Of course there is. It's a pharmaceutical company. But that doesn't mean that it's this dangerous thing that's been, they claim that it's rushed out, and this and that.
Well, I'm sure they didn't take their time with it.
Well, they fast-tracked it. But, this is still the best chance at getting rid of this virus is vaccination. We look at other countries. I think it was Norway, who's basically gotten rid of it for the most part, and that's basically through vaccination. That's the only way it's going to work. It's simply put, this is our best chance. So just do it. You just do it. You can't wait 10 years. Like, imagine if everybody waited 10 years while COVID ran rampant through America, waiting for the information to come through.
Right.
You know what the death toll would be? You just don't have time. But instead, you can rely on the 40 plus 50, whatever, 60 years of information we've had about vaccines to try and guide us, which is kind of what they did. I understand, I will tell people, go out and get the fucking vaccine. It's not up to you because it's endangering other people when you don't. If you get COVID, you could pass it out to other people. Right. You could fuck over other people. It's not like you get sick and it doesn't go to anybody else. If that was the case, then maybe you could make the argument, my body, my choice. And ironically, a lot of the anti-vaxxers don't agree with that statement when it comes to things like abortion. I don't want to get into that. I just think it's funny that they say, my body, my choice. And you're like, oh, really? And they're like, no, not really.
But I will say this, pro-vaxxers and anti-vaxxers, you all have a voice. And again, hit us up, Hotbox, Josh and Josh Talk Wrestling at gmail.com. Yep, I guess we're lazy and poor. We can't afford a new email, so we're going to use that. Josh and Josh Talk Wrestling at gmail.com. And what are your thoughts? Give us your opinions for it, against it. But yeah, I will say, with you, and I alluded to this, is kind of from one anti-vaxxer to the next. Your voice can definitely be heard, but you can also just get a vaccine too. Just get vaccine. And in a lot of states, we're offering lotteries. So you could win like $1 million for getting the vaccine.
How absurd
you might
is
save
that?
your life, and absurd. I don't care. Absurd. That's awesome. You might save your life and get $1 million. Sign me up.
Yeah, that's great and all, but think about it. The fact that they had to do this, and they're doing it as if the deterrent of, hey, this is going to greatly reduce your chances of death, premature death, isn't enough. It's not enough of a deterrent. You also have to throw in money. They're like, death, I could die, but money.
Well, the real bummer is the lottery money is taxpayer dollars, so they're just going to rake the taxpayer dollars up a little bit more.
It always comes back to the taxpayers getting screwed, whether it's killer cops or this COVID lottery that we have to do. You know what I mean? We always get fucked. So but it's absurd. It's absurd. Like, death is not enough of a deterrent. You need money now. And they interviewed people who were like, well, now that once they start off in the lottery, I was like, oh, now I'm interested.
Whatever it takes, man. At this point, whatever it takes. Mandate it. Offer more money. Pay people to do it.
I guess.
Universal income for a year. I don't know.
I guess it just sucks that we live in a world like that.
This is what our podcast is about. We talk about everything and nothing. Everyone gets a voice.
I think we did a good balance of everything and nothing. Yeah.
We solved everything, but that's the thing about America. Really, at the end of the day, America is the place where everything works and nothing works, all at the same time.
We're number one, but we're also number 200 or whatever.
There's a lot of things. America. I really think there's a lot of things this country's got going for it, we have a long ways to go. And that again, we're coming to you from a supercontinent, Pangea.
Right.
So we understand that, America has a long way to go.
America's inside of Pangea right now. But
it's different dimensions. It's kind of a long story. We're going to break that all out in another podcast.
But what we're just saying, it's a young country. We're like in our, barely adolescence compared to other countries, thousands of years old.
There's that too. And we're trying to go to any other country. No other country is going to have the same diversity we do. And we're trying to make everything work with the historical stuff that we got going on. And there's a lot. And there's a lot going on, and that's the thing is what it is to be American is different based on age, based on race, based on gender. Everyone's experience is different.
There's definitely different Americas depending on who you are. Yeah,
right. There's different Americas, and so I think it's something that we have to be cognizant of, and I think that's where that empathy comes in, is understanding that you've had it better than some people, and some people had it better than you, and I think it's that fine line of being happy with who you are, not just being satisfied, but like, what makes you happy.
Be happy with who you are, but also with what you have.
And what you have. But then again, it's easy to say that when you have started out a race maybe farther than someone else, right? So that's a situation where it's like...
That's when you check your privilege, or you try and recognize. And,
I think that sometimes we don't do that enough, and that we should do that on a lot of levels. Because, I'm also someone where it's like, someone's always had it worse than me, but someone's also had it better than me as well, too.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's those things where I think you got to take stock. And we talked earlier, pre-show, it's about gratitude. Sometimes when you think you don't have a lot, it's good just to be able to turn the water on and realize that someone else in the world doesn't have that same...
Yeah.
Regardless of what's going on in your own life, and regardless of what your perspective is. So, but again, I think with the empathy, I think if you actually you focus your quality on the interactions with people, understand where they might be coming from. Most of us probably are having a tough day. And I think that's something we have to get better at, is understanding that, well, one, let's try not to make people's days worse, but two, understand that people are having bad days, and if you can't make it better, don't make it worse. And I think that's something we all need to work on, and it's present company included,
Tell you to, work to make the world a better place at the personal level. But see, here's the thing. Earlier you said something about like you don't need to make the anti-vax thing political. My thing is everything's political in some way, shape, or form.
It turns out that way, to be honest. It turns
really
out
is.
that way, to be honest.
So I'd say always keep that in mind. Be a nice person, but also like next time you vote for somebody, let's say we talked about treating people at the fast food lane with respect, right? Do you treat that person nice and then still vote for politicians that don't encourage higher wages for fast food workers, or you badmouth them for striking to get $15 an hour or something like that? I want you to always keep that in mind, because I feel like that top layer you're talking about is important, but it's like, are you also doing something to actually affect positive change? And that's why I say everything's political, because like that person's having a bad day, maybe because they don't have enough money, and then you look at it and you realize that if CEO pay was proportional to average employee pay, we'd all be making like $36, $37 an hour, and you realize that. So it's like when you go to the voting, or when you pay attention to other social issues, recognize how that ties in to that person having a shitty day. I'm just saying, like, go that extra step if you can, like, and think about it and realize, and like, if you think somebody had a bad life, and you see that black people are incarcerated much more harshly than white people, but when you get to the polls and you see all the judges you can vote for, and you didn't research a single judge, and you just maybe randomly fill in the blanks based on the name, or you leave it blank or whatever, you're part of the problem, because you're not doing anything. Because I do take the time, and it's kind of a pain in the ass. I use an app and a website called Ballot Ready, and it's completely
that's great. I've used that before. Yeah.
But for anybody who doesn't know, it's nonpartisan. They don't take sides. All they do is they list who the people are that are going to be on your ballot in your area, and if they have endorsements from certain groups, they list that, but they don't like say, this guy's an asshole, this guy's a prick, she sucks, she's great. They don't do that. So what I do is then I open up another tab and I search the name of every single person on that ballot. And let me tell you, there's some real fucking shitty judges that were on my ballots, and I sure as shit voted no on them. But if you don't take the time to do that, if you can't a few times a year, right, or every couple years, if you can't take the time to spend an hour to, research your ballot, and you want to try and make the world a better place, come on. You know what I mean? You got to do that kind of stuff. I'm just saying it's good to be good to people, but it's even better to go that extra step and maybe fix their situation straight up, collectively, over time.
Right. And the reality is that people say that, you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. I really do think at the end of the day, whether we know it or not, we're all part of the problem. We're all part of the solution. Sure. I think some people take, maybe... more polarized, deeper side one way or another. But
right.
That is something to think about is, we all have to live here. And I know we've all heard it before, but, think about your kids and think about other generations. And I guess if you don't care about that, then you probably don't need to listen to the rest of this podcast. But it's something to think about is, I think about what I do now and how it's going to impact my child. And I do want them to have a country to live in. I want them to actually complain about the water not being too hot rather than not having water come out of the faucet.
Yeah, there's no water at all. Yeah.
I think it's people say first world problems. I think it's good that we're able to say first world problems because it is tough for some folks around the world, and especially those that aren't traveled. I've seen some things. My wife is definitely who's much more traveled than I am. Has certainly seen some things. Around the world, a lot of great things. Not everywhere's horrible around the world. I'm just saying, we in the U.S. do typically have pretty good.
Yeah.
The fact that we have central AC, most people have central AC. I mean, that's great. I mean, a lot of people, it's like they don't have that, and so those small little things you've got to just practice gratitude. But again, I think it gets back to empathy and your quality with interactions with people, and slowing down, and we're always rushing, and really just it's like I remember one of my coworkers was telling me this. They're like, I'm always noticing people leave. Everyone's rushing to get out of work, rushing to get on the train. Everyone's rushing to get home and do absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
You're going to go home and watch Netflix. You're going to go home and have some red wine, some smoke or something. Who cares? But you're rushing home for what?
Yeah.
Like, just breathe.
I gotta breathe. Yeah. I mean, I got to tell you, no, you're absolutely right. I got to tell you, it's bizarre to me when I meet people who just have their 9 to 5 and then they go home and they don't have anything else going on.
Nothing wrong with that, though.
Nothing wrong with that. I'm just like, what are you living for, though? Like, I mean, you're living for Wheel of Fortune, Pat Sajak's vacant stare. Like, you're living for this TV dinner or whatever. I mean,
Wheel of Fortune is a pretty cool show.
Vanna, she's still got it. I don't know. That's just a personal aside. I'm not, I'm just like, I guess I would want to encourage somebody, like, take an art class, listen to some new thing, try something different, whatever it is. I mean, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but like if all it is just living to work, like instead of like supporting a hobby or a business or something else, like your life's gonna, you're gonna have less to be happy about, and it comes back to like your gratefulness and happiness and empathy. And I mean, people will tell you it's common sense. Like if you have someone in your life or you have something going on in your life, you're gonna be more likely to be happy and empathetic and stuff like that. So
well, it's all about like whatever makes you happy. If you are someone that likes the 9 to 5, you like to come home and watch a USA television marathon every night, like Law and Order SVU, awesome. If that really makes you happy, awesome. But like for me, for example, we'll talk more about this in another podcast, but it was one of those things where about 4 years ago, I weighed about 400 pounds. At one point I had weighed over 400 pounds, but I've lost a lot of weight since then. But I realized I was in a position in my life where I hated who I was. I kind of hated just myself, but it was not in a position where it was weird because I was fine just living that way. It was like I didn't hate my family. I had a beautiful wife. I still have a beautiful wife. I had a dog, a wonderful condo, but I didn't like who I was. That's why I overate so much. That's why I was so fat. And I realized I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy with who I was, and it was becoming, I'm like, that's not a way to live life. Like I was actually, I never thought about, harming myself. It was just one of those situations where I was like content with just kind of living this status quo, just keep doing this. But then I realized I wasn't happy, and this is not the way to do it. And that's when I started thinking about what I was doing, making choices, individual choices. And you really have to fix yourself first. And we mentioned before, everything, peace starts within yourself. Right. Then it works out from and within your home. Then from your home, it works within your street. Your street works out to your ward, your ward to your city, state, so on and so forth. But it was one of those things where I realized I wasn't happy. And so I think that's the thing you have to sort of ask yourself is if you're not happy, you got to go a different angle. But if you gave the example, if you're a 9 to 5er and you get off and you go home and you warm up a couple TV dinners and you love watching Law and Order SVU and you like that, you legitimately like that, do it.
Then go for it. Yeah,
keep doing that. Yeah. Don't stop doing that. That's your thing.
Follow your bliss. If that's your bliss, it's just chilling. Yeah, go for it, I guess.
So I think that's the other thing too. We all need to find those. We all need to figure out those battles within ourselves too. We all have wounded childs. We had wounded children we need to take care of and take those bandages off. And those wounded children never go away. They're always part of us. We just got to kind of figure out, because we're the adults now, and we have to figure out how to have that empathy for them and how to take care for them. And that's how you move on. You know. But I feel like we're not doing that as a society. We're just kind of letting our trash flow out. And
I mean, that's the problem. We stigmatize mental health, taking a day off for mental wellness. It's
I gave the example actually earlier in the podcast. I took 30 days off.
Yeah.
Flexible time off, got everything done.
Yeah.
And
buy
then
the book.
Came back to buy the book. And they came back and said, well, the average is 14. So I'm like, but I can.
So
it's flexible time off. But I was stigmatized for taking 2 additional weeks off, even though I figured out
it's diabolical how they do that. You've seen Office Space, right?
Oh yeah.
You're wearing only 15 pieces of flair.
Right.
Well, that's the minimum. Well, if you want to do the minimum, if you need me to wear 17 pieces of flair, why the fuck don't you say so? Well, you don't have to. It's one of those things where that way they're able to tiptoe around and be like, well, we never made you, but you fucking did. Right. We'll have to talk about corporate culture one day.
Not all, corporate, and I do too. In corporate culture, I've learned a lot of great things from it too. Things that you can actually use in terms of like teamwork. Some of the stuff they talk about, getting a team together, motivating a team. Listen, corporate folks, they know what they're doing. There's some good stuff to that. But it's not all bad.
Right, but I would argue, that's like leadership training and just being, understanding people. It's not necessarily, what's the word, exclusive to corporate culture. You do find it there, absolutely.
But there's a lot of corporate games.
Yeah, I'm sure of it. Yeah, it's like I'm just saying, like you could separate that and just be, here's how to be a leader. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like a good leader. Yeah. So no, I don't doubt that you learned a lot of stuff. I mean,
I think you are doubting me. Actually, I see it in your eye.
I press X to doubt. Right.
What else? I think that's what we got. Right. What else we got? This is a good podcast. We got a lot. We go on tangents as we talk about everything and nothing.
But I like that freedom to do that versus on the show. I mean, obviously we wanted to try and focus it at wrestling. Yeah. We'd have little tangents here and there, but it was always very wrestling related. I like how we could just branch out and just
and we're the thing is we're every people. We are we have broad shoulders. We work hard. We are we're normal people.
We play hard.
We're normal people. Really, that's where I think we want just a show to talk about everything, and yet nothing.
Yeah.
And mentioned about pro wrestling and stuff. How I felt somewhat disingenuous in some levels, but I will always be a fan of pro wrestling.
Right.
I just think there's other people that are more qualified. And have more of the right, and you should be listening to their voice when it comes to pro wrestling. Although we will talk about pro wrestling on this podcast. But, hit us up, though. Hotbox, Josh Talk Wrestling at gmail.com. That hasn't changed. Give us your thoughts. That's going to drive future shows. We're going to take all the things we get from there, and then we're going to talk about that in future shows. But what else? Anything else you got for us, Josh?
I think that's about it. Let us know what you think of the new format. It hasn't really changed all that much when you get down to it.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
It reminds back in the 90s there was a TV news magazine called Extra. They started off covering the world of entertainment, and then you remember this? They branched out into the world of everything.
That's right.
So it's kind of like that. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Because if I remember right, Extra didn't last very long after they made the change. That's not going to happen to us, boss.
Well, we're kind of more of a small shop.
Yeah, we can.
We're a small shop.
We set the rules. But yeah, I'm going to tell people, I'll tell you, go fucking get vaxxed, man. You're fucking it up for the rest of us. This, all these, the threat of lockdown, the threat of Delta variants and everything. Every time I go out, I'm just wearing a mask. I'm double vaxxed. I'm all set up. I'm going to get that booster whenever my period is ready, whatever. But just fucking do it, man. You get people. We didn't talk about this enough. People acting like this is some tyrannical move, some overstep by government, and it's like, give me a fucking break. Somebody I respect very, very much. He's a gay man, and he I think I don't know how many years ago he married his partner. Finally, they've been together for 20 years and married for I don't know how long, but he finally got to marry anyway. And he posted a meme of someone saying, "Oh, you have to wear a piece of cloth on your face." Oh, man, that's really rough. That's really tyrannical and really taking your rights away. I wasn't able to marry my lover until just a few years ago. Right. She shut the fuck up. It's like,
yeah.
So go get vaccinated, you dipshit. You're fucking it up for the rest of us. This isn't just on you. This isn't just about your personal freedoms. We wear seatbelts. We obey speeding laws because it's for the greater good of everybody else, not just you. If you getting into a car accident and not wearing a seatbelt only affected you, maybe that'd be one thing. But there are so many times, and they'll tell you, that it will affect others. It will screw it up for the rest. So get vaccinated. The science is there.
Yeah, and if you can't, or that's another thing too. There's really no reason. Like if it's a question of you can't, I think if you actually go to like the Uber app, they'll give you a free ride to your vaccination.
Yeah.
But if you have Pfizer, both shots, to and from. I would love to hear from unvaccinated though. If you got rationale for not getting vaccinated.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear. Again,
we'll hear you.
I want to hear those thoughts.
Yeah, we'll listen to you. We might not agree with you. We might butt heads. I'm sure we will. But no, we'll listen to you, sure. I mean, that's what this is about. Yeah, like you said, we're not here to just trounce on people. Right. I mean,
if anyone's on the fence though with getting the vaccine, just get it. Just if you're on the fence about getting the vaccine, like listen, those that are unvaccinated, those that don't want to get the vaccine, everyone's doing their thing. If you're on the fence, just get the vaccine. Just get it. Just get it. Just come on.
And if you're not going to get the vaccine because you think it's microchipped, or as if the government gives a shit what my mailman is doing, and they're going to microchip him, try and invest in like some news that's not Newsmax or a Real America Network or anything that has a big eagle on the front of it, or anything that claims to be fair and balanced. You know what I mean? Try using other means of getting your information. You might not be a bad person, but you're woefully misinformed if you are not getting the vax because of those conspiratorial type things. If Q told you not to, you're fucking up.
Check, you got to check multiple sources. Be a critical thinker. Just think about where the information's coming from. That's something. Again, it goes back to books.
Right.
This is nothing with like internet. This is books.
Right.
Anything you read, you got to be a critical thinker.
Or if you're not a critical thinker and you just realize you're a dipshit, just follow what the CDC says. Just go to cdc.gov. That's it. You're one-stop shopping because you're not going to be able to disseminate something I write on a cocktail napkin from an official press release. So why not just go with this thing? This is what I'm telling you to just go with this source if you're that dumb. I'll make it easy for you. You know what I mean? You don't want a lot of choices, right? There you go. Just saying. Maybe I can reach somebody.
Oh, hey, man. We hear you. But hey, all thoughts, welcome. Hit us up, Hotbox, Josh, talkwrestling@gmail.com. Meantime, take care of yourself and others. Be kind. Break that bread with the enemy, man.
You basically did the Jerry Springer sign off.
Oh.
Watch out for yourself and others.
Oh, wait. I got to.
And this is after like.
Well, I like the DMX thing, break bread with the enemy. I like that.
That's okay. Yeah. That's
but I don't want to go Jerry Springer. How about just.
X gonna give it to you.
Yes, dude. Hey.
That's the only rap song I ever liked, other than like maybe Sir Mix-a-Lot's "Baby Got Back."
Oh, okay.
So I always when DMX died, I played it and I was like, man, I always tipped my hat to him that he was I'm not a rap guy at all. So like for him,
you don't like Sugar Hill Gang or
no, none of that stuff.
Right.
I mean, I'm not I'm not like a hater or anything, but I'm just like it's not for me. But DMX. Was able to like break that boundary, and I always like tipped my hat to him. I was like, man, you're able to get this metalhead punk guy to really genuinely enjoy your song.
Oh, his voice!
I tipped my hat to you.
It's like so raw, but it's like polished and like it's weird. Like it's a raw yet polished. That makes no sense saying it, but like it's a raw and polished.
It was
voice.
just right.
Like,
it was just right.
It just sucked you in, man.
Yeah, no, it's just good stuff. So
heck yeah, dude.
Here's a belated rest in peace to DMX.
Yeah, it's delayed. But yeah, no, hey, I guess what I would say is, remember we all had to do this together. We had to build this world together. In order for us to keep going, we got to keep building together. So we got to find some common ground. And so I guess that's what I would say is try to build a sense of community. Try to have some love for each other and try to understand. That's maybe what we need to focus on is try to understand the other side.
Try to understand the other side, but at the same time, make sure that your stance is based on rationality and reality. Yeah. Like, don't get your information from YouTube.
On both sides, too. That goes for everyone, too.
That's the thing. You'll have well-meaning people who just have bad information. Is your information correct? Like, can it be, like, corroborated? Does it make sense?
Well, think about the celebrity death hoaxes, how fast those spread.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone feels stupid. Like, well, no, I heard from you. And like, well, no, but this person, that's exactly the same thing.
I remember I thought Hulk Hogan had died. Do you remember that? And I even got it because I saw 7 different sites and, like, different people saying. Yeah. And I was like, oh, rest in peace, Hulk Hogan. And then I was like, no. I mean, that's one of the more benign examples of misinformation. But like, we're talking like people. You heard about the cow dewormer people are taking?
No.
I forget what the name of the drug is, but it's a cow dewormer.
What?
And apparently in a couple other countries they were considering using it for COVID treatment, but here they're like, no, there's no. But the problem is you have Sean Hannity and people saying, the FDA is blocking use of this drug, that could be used to treat COVID. And of course, there are people who take that information. They say, let me get the cow dewormer over the vaccination because they're that far down the rabbit hole, because they're that misinformed. Yeah. I said the celebrity hoax thing was benign. This is like people dying, people getting sick. Yeah, no, go look it up. I forget the name of the drug, of course. But yeah, it's a dewormer for cows. And, I mean, the Pfizer version of the vaccine just got approved by the FDA. Yeah. The FDA is not a perfect organization by any stretch, but that it does mean something. You know what I mean? You're looking at something that is safe enough to at least use it, Jesus. I mean, if the alternative is cow dewormer, come on, people.
It's like we get taxes done, right? And we go to an accountant because we don't know anything about numbers.
Right.
Well, it's kind of the same thing. We don't know anything about science, so we rely on scientists, the medical industry to kind of figure this out for us. So, yeah, I get people are like, yeah, but they could be telling us anything. I'm like, yeah, but you got to give trust in some of these things. Like, it's just everything we do, we don't necessarily know. Like, you go skydiving, you're going to probably listen to the person that's teaching you how to jump out, right?
Right.
We have to assume they were certified. We have to just.
You do have to put a level of trust.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you can't, I remember I had a teacher in critical thinking class in college, and his whole thing was you have to critically think about everything. And I was like, my argument was, yeah, but like when I walk outside, I have to trust that the sidewalk's not going to collapse under my feet. That's a reasonable thing to assume. It's a reasonable thing to assume that you go to a professional skydiving school founded by professional skydivers with hundreds of hours of experience, 37, successful jumps.
Right.
You're going to assume that they're going to hire the right people. And, and the other thing to keep in mind is, people distrust science, but science is a field where if you're wrong or you publish something that's incorrect, your peers will either laugh at you or you'll lose credibility. You'll lose the prestige. This is important that they get things right. So when scientists make some kind of claim about something, they've tested the shit out of it because they don't want to be wrong. Because if they're wrong, they're laughed out of their field. And you might say, well, that's not concrete enough. I'm like, well, but this is what scientists do. Scientists don't go to school and spend their entire life in, neuroscience or virology or whatever, in this case, I guess, just to spout out bullshit later on. Like, I've invested 20 years so I can make a prank or something. Like, what are you doing,
Yeah.
Trust science. For Christ's sake, science built my phone. Science is allowing this microphone to record my inane ramblings onto the internet. Science works. Not your half-baked ideas about your energy frequencies or I'm healthy, my family's healthy, we're fine. Or, first it was masks, now it's not masks because things have changed even in the slightest. Everything's out the window, just do it. This is the best chance we got. That's all I got.
That's all we got.
That's all we got.
If you're still with us after 3 hours, this is a good one, right?
Right now, without editing, it's 2 hours, 27 minutes.
Jesus.
And, approaching 28 minutes.
Well, this has been good. But hey, we will be back.
Yeah.
Coming to you from Pangea every time. Pangea forever.
Mm-hmm.
And take care of each other if you can, all right?
Good night, everybody.
Laters.